A quiet walk through ancient smoke, drifting across centuries before anyone bothered to ask when it all began. You begin in darkness, the soft, velvety kind that makes you wonder whether your eyes are open at all. There's a faint scent in the air, earthy and warm, like dried leaves that never quite finished their last conversation with sunlight. You breathe in, slow and steady, and the world gradually unrolls around you like a scroll warmed by someone's careful hands. You are standing on the edge of an ancient campsite somewhere in Central Asia, thousands of years before anyone invented written schedules, deadlines, or the phrase, "Sorry, I'm just really busy this week." The air is crisp enough to make you grateful for the fur-lined cloak someone draped over your shoulders. An act of generosity you absolutely didn't earn, because you quite literally just appeared here. A low fire crackles in the center of the encampment. Around it, a handful of people sit with the heavy exhaustion that comes from a day filled with hunting, walking, and politely pretending their joints aren't making weird noises. There's a ceremonial bowl on the ground, carved from dark stone. Thin trails of smoke drift upward in lazy spirals. You probably won't make it through this day. Ancient life was messy, exhausting, and unreasonably allergic to modern convenience. But don't worry, this is just a story, and you're here purely for the observational experience. No pressure to join a tribe or prove you can make fire with sticks. Everyone here already assumes you couldn't. Before we begin wandering deeper into history, take a moment, just a small one, to gently like this video and subscribe, especially if you enjoy slow stories, ancient mysteries, or trying to fall asleep while listening to someone ramble about lost civilizations. Your support helps keep this channel cozy and alive, and I truly appreciate it. If you're awake enough, comment below with your location and your local time. I love seeing where everyone is listening from. It makes this wandering journey feel like we're all huddled around the same, impossibly large campfire. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You step toward the group. The earth beneath your feet is a patchwork of frost and soil, the kind that crunches softly when your weight presses down. The people around the fire glance at you with the expression all humans have worn since the dawn of time. Who is this, and why are they here? But it's not hostile, more curious, as though you're some minor spirit that wandered in on accident. A shaman sits opposite you, their cloak decorated with bird bones, beads, and a few items you really hope are symbolic. They lean forward, slow and almost feline, placing a handful of dried plant matter onto the heated stones inside the carved bowl. The smoke thickens, curls, and rolls outward like a living thing stretching its arms. Here lies your first major historical fact of the night. Archaeologists discovered that ancient people used cannabis in ritual settings as far back as 500 BCE. With burned residues found in wooden braziers in the mountains of western China. But tonight we drift even earlier, because evidence suggests people may have used the plant long before we uncovered their ash-covered toys. The smoke reaches you. It doesn't sting. It simply brushes against your face like a drowsy cat. You inhale again, not because you're trying anything, but because you exist and breathing is one of your hobbies. A faint warmth spreads through your chest. The shaman begins chanting in a low, rhythmic voice, the kind of cadence that makes your mind sway like tall grass. The others join in, and the whole scene becomes a soft chorus of quiet voices and rising smoke. There's a weird cultural tidbit you might enjoy. Some ancient groups believed smoke carried their messages to the gods, which is arguably more poetic than modern people using email filters to avoid each other. The ritual isn't frantic or wild. It's slow, contemplative, almost sleep-inducing. You wonder for a moment whether historians will ever truly understand how these gatherings felt from the inside. Historians still debate whether these rituals were primarily spiritual, medicinal, social, or simply an ancient version of "we're cold and bored. Let's try something." As the fire pops softly, you look at the faces around you, lined, peaceful, illuminated by the shifting glow. You watch the smoke flow upward, twisting like it's trying to write something on the night sky. You feel calm. You feel grounded. You feel like you're sitting in the first shared moment of human relaxation, a small pocket of ancient stillness. And as the chanting continues, you quietly step back from the circle, letting the night fold around you again. The world shifts. You walk into darkness once more, carrying with you the scent of ancient smoke and the quiet knowledge that people have been seeking comfort, relief, and meaning through simple plants far longer than any written story can fully capture. The ground beneath you changes. The air grows warmer. A new chapter waits ahead. You emerge into sunlight, not the harsh, modern type that reflects off car windshields and reminds you of errands you forgot to run, but a gentler, golden warmth that feels like it belongs in an old tapestry. You're in a bustling marketplace somewhere in the ancient Near East, maybe Mesopotamia, or perhaps a similar crossroads of culture and trade. The truth is, the exact location is a little fuzzy. Historians still debate whether cannabis traveled here earlier than the written record suggests. But that's okay, your feet crunch on straw-covered stone, and the scene hums with life. Vendors shout in languages you don't know but somehow understand in spirit. A man tries to sell you a clay pot you definitely don't need but admire anyway. A woman offers you figs so sweet they might as well be nature's candy. You move through the crowd at the pace of someone strolling through a dream, slow, unhurried, pretending not to notice when goats wander by with more confidence than you have. Then you smell it again. Faint but familiar. Smoke. Not cooking smoke, not incense, but something with that mellow, earthy undertone that reminds you of the ritual you just left behind. You follow the scent through an alley framed by woven textiles. The fabric sways slightly in the breeze, brushing against your shoulders like polite ghosts. At the end of the alley sits a small tea house, though calling it a tea house is generous. It's more of a shaded corner with cushions and a roof that looks like it's held up purely by hope and habit. A few people sit inside, lounging on rugs that have seen more life than any of them. They're passing around a small pipe carved from bone and wood. You quietly join them, because you've committed to being the world's most passive, non-intrusive time traveler. A man with sun-browned skin and a beard that could house small wildlife gestures for you to sit. He holds the pipe out as if offering you a freshly baked cookie. You politely shake your head, not because you're above ancient experimentation, but because you're more interested in the atmosphere. He shrugs in the universal way that says, "More for us," and takes another inhalation. The group falls into a pleasant rhythm of murmured stories, soft laughter, and long contemplative silences. Here you get your historical fact for this section. Cannabis was used medicinally in ancient Mesopotamia, with clay tablets describing it as a treatment for grief, pain, and the hand of a ghost, which is perhaps the most dramatic diagnosis ever recorded. You lean back on the cushion, letting your body sink into its worn fibers. The quiet chatter around you blends into a soothing hum. Someone nearby strums a lute-like instrument with lazy fingers, and the notes drift through the warm air like floating petals. In this peaceful haze, you learn your obscure tidbit. Some early cultures believed certain plants were guarded by spirits who would refuse to grow if humans approached them with bad attitudes. Which, honestly, explains every houseplant you've ever accidentally murdered. The tea house owner shuffles by, placing a clay cup of warm herbal brew in front of you. It smells like honey, citrus, and mild skepticism. You sip it anyway, feeling the heat glide down your throat. A quiet stillness settles over the group. The world outside fades behind the cloth-draped entrance. You listen to someone recount a tale about a trader who claimed his camel could predict rainfall. This story devolves into a friendly argument, then a calm lull, then comfortable silence again. Ancient time passes slowly, like a lazy river deciding it'll get somewhere eventually. Someone asks you a question in a gentle voice. You don't understand the words, but the tone is unmistakable. Are you staying long? You smile softly, shake your head, and gesture vaguely toward the world beyond the alley. They nod in understanding. No one stays forever in places like this. Not in markets, not in tea houses, not in small shared corners of human connection. They simply pass through, gather warmth, and drift onward. As you stand to leave, the man with the beard calls something after you. You don't know the exact translation, but you feel the sentiment. May your path be soft beneath your feet. You step back into the sunlight. The fabrics brush your shoulders again. The crowd swells around you with the timeless, comforting chaos of life. And somewhere behind you, smoke rises in slow coils, carrying stories you'll never fully hear but somehow already understand. The world begins to shift again, softly, gently, pulling you toward the next moment in this long, drifting journey through history's quiet corners. You step out from the quiet, resin-scented chamber where you last lingered, and the corridor that greets you feels a little warmer now, as if the air itself has been steeped in centuries of whispered secrets. The light glows dimly from bronze lamps hanging on thick chains overhead, and each small flame trembles the way eyelids do before someone finally falls asleep. If the architecture around you had a voice, it would probably clear its throat politely before speaking. Nothing abrupt, nothing that would jolt the nerves. You breathe in, slow and steady. The stillness hums like an old song that everyone half remembers but no one can quite sing correctly. You walk forward with the soft, padded steps of someone who knows this night will unfold at its own pace. Slower than a winter river, steadier than ceremonial incense rising from a clay bowl. Somewhere ahead, a wooden door creaks open on its own, not ominously, more like an elderly librarian nudging a shelf open because a book has wandered off again. The room beyond it smells of parchment and dried flowers, a strange combination that makes you think of both fragile scholarship and a kitchen where someone forgot to remove a bouquet from the windowsill last season. You step inside. The walls here are lined with scrolls, some thick, some thin, some tightly rolled, some so loose they look like they're sighing after too many centuries of being asked to behave. A few are tucked into simple wooden compartments. Others rest inside clay cylinders decorated with curling patterns that remind you of smoke trails. You half expect one of the scrolls to lean toward you and mutter, "Took you long enough." Your hand brushes a stack of reed baskets, each one neatly labeled in a script that looks like the handwriting of someone who took pride in calligraphy but occasionally got distracted. When you tilt your head, you notice something curious. A series of marks shaped like little flames. They appear repeatedly on the scrolls closest to you, as though someone cataloging this room long ago decided that fire-adjacent knowledge needed its own special sign. You raise an eyebrow. These markings weren't mentioned earlier in the archive, and the story inside your mind adjusts to this new discovery like a cloak shifting over your shoulders. You open one of the flame-marked scrolls, unrolling it slowly, the parchment crackling softly in protest, like someone being woken earlier than planned. You hold it delicately, because even the air feels nervous about touching anything too suddenly. Elegant ink strokes form illustrations that dance across the surface. They're beautiful in an old-world way. The outlines thick and confident, the colors faint but stubbornly present, as if refusing to give up after hundreds of winters. And the images. They show people gathering in early rituals, circles of figures passing a thin, curling plume of smoke from one to another with the seriousness of a tax office meeting. Except tax offices rarely involve crowns of woven hemp leaves or dancing figures with drums shaped like turtle shells. So here we are. You've stumbled upon something ancient, something humanity has been curious about since long before hashtags or overly complicated coffee orders existed. When did people start using wild plants, especially the smoky, relaxing ones, to change how their minds felt? You lean closer to the scroll. The figures dance around a small fire pit, and above it, the artist has drawn curling patterns, spiraling upwards like a lazy dragon that didn't feel like intimidating anyone today. A historical fact slips softly into view, like a librarian pushing her glasses up before correcting a pronunciation. Archaeologists discovered cannabis residue on stones used in funeral rituals in Western China dating back over 2,500 years. The air must have been aromatic. You imagine someone back then saying, "We're honoring the ancestors," while someone else quietly thought, and perhaps feeling pleasantly floaty while doing it. But as you trace the edges of the scroll, you also remember something else. Something historians themselves admit with the subtle shrug of people who've spent too much time staring at broken pottery. Historians still debate whether these early rituals were about spiritual connection, medicinal relief, or simply evening entertainment. Scholars love to argue over these things, usually while drinking historically inaccurate coffee. Your eyes drift toward another section of the scroll where a tiny marginal illustration shows a group of men under a tree passing something between them with the same casual confidence of teenagers hiding behind a shed. Except here they wear robes, and sandals, and expressions that say, "This is extremely ceremonial, we swear." You chuckle softly, because even ancient artists seemed unable to resist adding a little humor. A little note in the corner, written in faint ink, catches your attention. It translates loosely into something like, "The smoke is sacred, but please do not wander off mid-ceremony. Fair warning." You continue drifting through the room, and soon you come upon a second scroll, thicker, worn at the edges, and tied with a string the color of old twine. You untie it gently, letting it roll open across a polished stone table that reflects torchlight in ripples. The artwork here is different, more rigid, more formal. Rows of men in structured garments kneel before a brazier that glows faintly orange, and the smoke rising from it is drawn in geometric patterns, as if the artist wanted to make very sure you understood. This was not a casual hangout. This was state-approved inhalation. You can almost hear an ancient official clearing his throat and saying, "Please inhale responsibly." This scroll seems to depict the Scythians, the horse-riding, tattooed nomads that ancient writers described with both admiration and mild confusion. One Greek historian once wrote about them using hemp seeds in steam baths, tossing handfuls onto hot stones until the air turned into a thick cloud. No Greek vapor bath could surpass it, he insisted. You imagine the scene. A communal dome tent, people gathered inside, someone tossing handfuls of seeds onto the fire with the enthusiasm of a chef seasoning a dish. The smoke rises. The group relaxes. Someone probably starts singing slightly off-key. It's relatable in a way that transcends centuries. You pause and realize something. Humanity has always been a little too creative when it comes to altering consciousness. Whether through ceremony, medicine, curiosity, or slow winter boredom, people always found a method. There's a comfort in that continuity, like seeing that old habits survive long after the people who created them fade into history. You step back from the scroll now, letting it coil itself gently like a contented cat settling into sleep. The archive feels warmer. The story deepens. Your footsteps soften against the floor. And somewhere, far ahead in the dim corridor, something new is waiting. Something with a scent of desert sands, ritual smoke, and old legends whispered under starry skies. But we'll get there in time. For now, you walk forward, and the torches flicker as though nodding you onward. You walk deeper into the chamber, and the air changes subtly, like someone quietly adjusting the lighting in a theater. The torches dim a little, the glow softens, and the space around you feels wider, older, almost expectant. If rooms had personalities, this one would be the thoughtful uncle at family gatherings. The one who only speaks every 20 minutes but drops a profound sentence each time. Your fingers trail along a carved wooden railing that spirals toward a lower platform. The wood is ancient, smooth in places where centuries of hands have brushed it, rough in spots where the grain rises like stiff winter grass. You descend slowly. You don't feel rushed. This is the kind of space that teaches you how to walk, not the other way around. At the bottom of the steps, you find a low stone table surrounded by cushions that look like they were stitched during a dynasty no one remembers. They're faded, lumpy, and have a faint smell of lavender and old wool, the universal scent of fabrics that have seen too much history and not enough sunlight. You kneel, and a soft puff of dust escapes from one of the cushions, drifting lazily through the air. The dust moves with exaggerated slowness, like it's on a spiritual journey of its own and would appreciate your patience. On the stone table lies a set of slender clay tablets, arranged neatly in a semicircle as if someone had prepared them for an audience. You pick up the first one. It's warm, oddly warm, as though it's been sitting near a hidden ember. The surface is engraved with tiny marks, cuneiform symbols lined up like rows of orderly ants carrying oversized ideas. You squint, leaning in, and the meaning reveals itself bit by bit. This tablet describes ancient Mesopotamian incense rituals, burning aromatic plants to create a bridge between worlds. Of course, humans have always hoped smoke could help them call customer service in the spiritual realm. Your fingertips brush across a depiction showing a high priest in a tall, tiered headdress standing before an altar. He holds a long-handled spoon filled with glowing embers, and wisps of scented smoke rise in curling shapes. Sacred, solemn, and, if you stretch your imagination, maybe a little dramatic. You can almost hear someone whispering, "Add more frankincense. The gods can't smell anything from up here." You smile. Smoke always meant something to people. Meaning was the part that mattered. More than the plant, more than the ritual, more than the method. As you place the tablet down, a soft memory stirs from an earlier corridor, the faint scent of resin clinging to the air. You inhale again. Yes, there it is, tucked beneath the stone, drifting from vents carved into the floor like quiet breathing. The second clay tablet is heavier, its edges worn from generations of hands. When you lift it, a bit of ancient grit falls away and lands on your sleeve. It feels like someone tapping your shoulder and saying, "You're holding a piece of millennia, young traveler. Handle it nicely." On this tablet, you see a scene more vivid than the first. A group of figures sit cross-legged in a circle inside a reed hut, passing a small bowl between them. The artist carved each face with a serene, slightly zoned-out expression, the unmistakable look of people pondering deep questions like, what if the stars are just holes poked in the sky so the universe can breathe? A small caption is etched beneath the image, translated roughly to, "The herb of dreams brings calm to troubled minds, but only when shared." A good rule, honestly. Even modern society tosses this wisdom around in the form of group meditation, communal teas, and awkward trust exercises at corporate retreats. The bowl they pass is carved from a single piece of stone, the kind that glitters faintly when struck by firelight. The artist took care in detailing it, almost reverently, hinting that this vessel mattered far beyond its simple purpose. You tilt your head. This scene is familiar. It resembles carvings found in Central Asia, where nomadic tribes used various dream plants long before anyone built cities or argued over borders. They believed smoke carried prayers upward, efficient spiritual delivery service, long before overnight shipping. A line on the tablet reveals your obscure, weird tidbit for the section. Some tribes mixed hemp with wild garlic and mint, believing the combination would help them speak clearly to the spirits, while simultaneously protecting them from ghost-induced bad breath. Practical and mystical, a rare combination. You place the tablet aside, letting your hands rest for a moment on the cool stone. The archive feels like it's leaning in now, wrapping around you like a warm cloak woven from centuries of experimentation, curiosity, and delightfully questionable decision-making. You glance to your left and notice a mural, an enormous one, faded nearly to nothing, yet its outlines remain as stubborn as old stories. You walk over, trailing your fingertips across the plaster. The cracks form branching lines like dried riverbeds in a desert. The mural depicts a massive open plain beneath a wide sky. In the center, a group of riders, their horses painted with thick, confident brushstrokes. Their bodies lean forward as if galloping through time. And at the heart of the group, someone holds a bundled pouch high above their head. You narrow your eyes. Pouch of seeds? Leaves? Hard to tell. The painter wasn't aiming for botanical accuracy. They were aiming for meaning, and that's always more interesting anyway. A low caption near the bottom reads, "The sky hears what the earth grows." Poetic, slightly cryptic, very ancient. You remember learning something about this, how cultures across steppe regions often believed that plants capable of altering the mind were gifts from sky gods, falling as celestial hints or challenges. A sort of divine scavenger hunt with spiritual side effects. You step back and admire how the painter captured motion without movement. Their horses look as though they're about to run off the wall entirely, hooves suspended mid-gallop. The brushwork creates a soft illusion of drifting dust clouds, making you want to slow your breathing to avoid disturbing them. You take another step back, and the mural seems to shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on the riders, your eyes catch something faint in the background. A tent, its flap open just enough to reveal a glowing pot inside. The smoke wafts upward, disappearing into the painted sky. It symbolizes something: sanctuary, transformation, maybe even a reminder that home is where your favorite herbs are stored. Hard to say. Ancient symbolism was often a jackpot of meanings layered together like old parchment. Scholars still debate many interpretations, and they will continue debating for the next few hundred years just to stay employed. You walk away from the mural feeling a gentle warmth, the kind you get from connecting with minds separated from you by eras yet strangely familiar in their desires. To cope, to imagine, to ease the mind, to feel something beyond the ordinary. You move toward the far archway, the one draped in crimson cloth worn to the softness of petals. A glow pulses beyond it. A deeper story waits. But this is your pace, not the archives. You pass beneath the cloth, the fabric brushing your shoulders like a bow from a well-mannered host. And the next chamber greets you with the quiet sound of crackling embers. The doorway widens into a circular chamber lit entirely by a fire pit sunk into the floor. The flames rise only a hand's span high, tame and deliberate, like they know they're here for ambience rather than chaos. The light flickers across the walls, revealing shelves carved straight into the stone, each lined with scrolls, wooden boxes, and jars sealed with dark resin. The air is a little warmer here, a little denser, as if the stories stored in this room exhale slowly around you. You're not just entering a chamber. You're stepping into the place where memories gather politely, take their seats, and wait to be told. A round cushion sits across from the fire. When you settle into it, a small sigh escapes you, much louder than you intended. The cushion is unbelievably soft, with that perfect combination of warmth and weight that makes you question whether this room intends for you to stand up anytime soon. Before you have a chance to sink fully into it, a soft creak echoes from the wall behind the fire. One of the shelves slowly rotates, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside it rests a single object, a bowl, a very old bowl, not ornate, not jeweled, not engraved with cosmic prophecies, just simple clay and deeply used. The kind of bowl that didn't live on display, it lived in hands. You crawl forward and lift it carefully. Feels lighter than you expect, and warm, as though it remembers something. Inside, you see faint, stubborn traces of residue along the inner curve, dark, earthy, and clinging with the persistence of an idea that refuses to fade. This bowl holds stories. Literally. Your thumb rubs along the rim. A small inscription circles the outer edge, written in a script that looks like early Proto-Sanskrit, the kind carved before rules were standardized and stylists got involved. You squint, tilt your head, let your eyes relax until the characters sink into meaning. For the evenings we wished would never end. It hits you right in the chest, simple, nostalgic, and so profoundly human that it could have been written yesterday on the inside of a coffee mug. You exhale, letting that line settle in your bones. It's almost too easy to imagine this bowl being passed among friends sitting around a fire, swapping stories, singing off-key songs, and slowly becoming philosophers as the night deepened. You notice something etched on the base as well. A small symbol of a plant, long leaves fanning outward in a style reminiscent of early Indian botanical sketches. The roots are drawn as swirling loops, almost like they're dancing underground. You trace the symbol, and your mind flickers with recognition. This is Bang, one of the earliest representations of it. It wasn't smoked in this era, not commonly. It was ground, mixed, stirred into milk or water, made into a paste, shaped into celebratory snacks. A plant folded seamlessly into ritual, medicine, festivity, and the kind of laughter that makes your ribs hurt the next morning. The fire cracks softly, like it approves of your discovery. You set the bowl down reverently, and then, right on cue, a scroll falls from an upper shelf with impeccable dramatic timing. It hits the floor with a thwop that is both dusty and self-important. You pick it up. The parchment is thick and pleasantly crinkled, the kind of texture that makes archivists weep with joy. When you unroll it, the scent of aged ink drifts up, sharp, smoky, and slightly sweet. The scroll illustrates a festival scene. People gathered around a large wooden table, grinding leaves with rounded stones, mixing them into drinks poured from tall metal jugs. You recognize the little clues: bronze bangles, early dodas, musicians playing flutes made of river reed. A simple caption runs beneath the art. We drank to remember the gods. We laughed to remember ourselves. That might be the most accurate description of human celebration ever written. You smile to yourself. The people in this drawing are not ancient strangers, they are familiar. Every culture has moments where the ordinary becomes sacred simply because you're surrounded by the right people. You roll the scroll closed and look back to the fire. The flames shift suddenly, taller now, brighter, as though responding to the memory in your hands. You feel a tug, gentle but firm, urging you toward the opposite side of the chamber. There, a narrow stairwell spirals downward into darkness. The first step is cool under your foot, and the air drifting upward is colder, sharper, carrying the mineral scent of untouched stone. Feels different, older, more serious. Like the deeper you go, the closer you get to truths that haven't been told in a very, very long time. You draw one slow breath and descend. The firelight fades behind you. Your footsteps echo softly, swallowed by the spiral. For a moment, everything is quiet. Then you see a faint blue glow ahead. You're about to enter the oldest part of the archive, a chamber that hasn't been opened by human hands for centuries. A place where the story isn't just preserved, it's waiting. The blue glow trembles faintly at the end of the stairwell, like moonlight trapped underwater. It's soft, almost shy, the kind of light that seems unsure whether it truly wants to be seen. You follow it anyway, step by gentle step, until the stairs flatten out and the narrow corridor opens into a vast underground hall. The moment you enter, the air changes. It cools against your skin, brushing past you with a slow, ancient exhale. There is a stillness down here that feels almost too heavy for movement. The kind of silence that has weight, age, and very clear opinions about being disturbed. You stand at the threshold, letting your eyes adjust. The chamber is enormous, larger than any room you've seen above. The ceiling arches so high it vanishes into shadow. And at the center of the space sits a circular stone platform, raised slightly, illuminated by a cluster of glowing crystals embedded in the floor. They emit that soft blue light, shimmering like frozen starlight. You step closer. The glow brightens as you approach, responding to your presence with the enthusiasm of a cat, pretending it isn't excited you came home. Up close, the platform reveals itself to be a giant carved disc. The entire surface is covered in inscriptions. Spirals, symbols, maps of rivers and mountains that existed long before modern borders were invented. Lines swoop around the stone like flowing water, intersecting and looping with deliberate grace. At the center of the disc is the most striking carving of all. A circle of figures sitting together in a ring, passing a bowl. Not a royal council, not warriors planning conquest, just people sharing space, stories, and something clearly very meaningful. Their hands overlap. Their expressions are soft. The bowl is the only detailed object in the scene, carved with such precision you can see the slight curves of its rim. The same bowl you held in the chamber above. You sit on the edge of the stone platform, letting your fingers drift across the carved figures. The stone feels impossibly smooth, worn by centuries of reverence, not erosion. Whoever carved this didn't intend the art to be admired from afar. They intended it to be touched. And the more you trace the lines, the more you realize something. This isn't just artwork. It's a memory, a communal memory, etched into stone so time couldn't swallow it. You lower your hand and rest it on the center carving of the bowl. Heat pulses gently from the stone, startling you, warmth where there should be cold. A faint hum begins to rise from beneath the floor, soft at first, barely noticeable, like distant chanting muffled by walls 1,000 years thick. You stay still, listening. The hum grows, deep and resonant, carrying a rhythm you don't recognize but somehow feel. A sound that sits perfectly between music and heartbeat. The stone beneath you vibrates subtly, the way a drum's skin trembles when someone sings nearby. The carvings flicker just once but unmistakably. You blink hard. Maybe you imagined it. The hum continues, and with it, a strange sensation grows behind your eyes. Not pressure, not pain, more like a memory someone left on a shelf and you just brushed the dust off. You inhale slowly. The scent rising from the platform is earthy, sweet, faintly smoky. Something ancient and herbal that you've never smelled but instantly recognize. You're inhaling history, literally. The room feels warmer. The glow brightens. Your thoughts stretch out, calm and wide, like they're finding their own soft places to rest. A quiet realization surfaces. This chamber isn't a shrine. It's a teaching space. People once gathered here, not to worship, but to learn from what the plant offered. They weren't chasing visions or escape. They were chasing clarity, connection, the feeling of sitting in total honesty with others. The hum deepens. Your pulse slows to match it. You place your palms on the stone, and suddenly, the blue crystals flare bright. Your vision tilts. For a moment, you're not in the chamber anymore. You're outside, somewhere warm and open, where trees sway above a village built of earth and timber. Night drapes over the world, soft and deep. People sit around a fire, passing a bowl in slow, deliberate turns. Laughter rises gently, like embers drifting upward. Someone sings a simple melody. Someone else drums lightly against their knee. Feels peaceful, human, so effortlessly warm. Just when you settle into the vision, it melts away like breath fading on glass. The chamber returns. The carvings dim. The hum dissolves back into silence. You're left on the stone platform, breathing slowly, as though your lungs remembered a rhythm you didn't know you'd forgotten. Historians would debate, endlessly and dramatically, whether early ritual use was spiritual, medicinal, recreational, or social. But sitting here, in this chamber, after what you just experienced, the categories seem too small, too tidy, too modern. The truth is simpler. People gathered. People shared. People softened into the night together. And sometimes that's the whole story. You slide off the platform and stand at its edge. Your legs feel steady but light, as if some quiet part of you loosened a knot it had been holding for years. Ahead, on the opposite side of the chamber, you notice a new doorway, one that wasn't illuminated before the crystals awakened. A narrow tunnel waits there, carved with the same looping plant motifs as the bowl. It leads deeper, much deeper. You take one long, grounding breath, then step toward the tunnel. Your foot crosses the threshold. The crystals behind you dim. The darkness ahead slowly brightens with a soft golden glow. Not blue this time. A warm color. A human color. A new era is waiting. You continue walking. You move through the dim, incense-softened room as the desert night settles like a velvet curtain over the earth. The stars outside flicker with the same gentle stubbornness you've begun to associate with ancient people and their habits. Habits that somehow travel across thousands of years and still land in the modern world like a camel wandering into a convenience store, simply because that's what it's always done. The air feels warmer now, or maybe that's just your body adjusting to the slow, ambling rhythm of the story. A clay oil lamp burns in the corner, its flame giving off the faint smell of resin and sheep fat. You're surprised by how calming it is, like a prehistoric scented candle, minus the marketing budget. You hear a soft crackle as the wick curls, and the sound sinks into your ears like a lullaby that's been traveling ages just to reach you. You step deeper into the room, your feet brushing over woven rugs whose patterns have no beginning and no end, the way the ancient world liked things. You sense movement behind you, the outline of a man preparing herbs on a flat stone. his hands busy with motions so practiced they feel ceremonial. His robe rustles, and one sleeve slips down to reveal an arm tattooed with symbols of wind, drift, and change. Their meaning known only to his ancestors and, possibly, his family cat. He glances at you without raising his head. A small smile flickers, says, "Ah, yes, another night wanderer, another curious soul seeking a story." You nod, because nodding is the universal sign for, "I'm here for whatever this is." A bowl sits on the ground near him, carved from dark stone and smoothed by countless fingers. Inside it is a mixture of herbs, some familiar, others less so, and one that looks suspiciously like the modern weed you'd see in a friend's pocket. If your friend were the type to say things like, "Behold, the ancient plant of wisdom," while wearing socks with sandals. People think they invented relaxation. The man mutters in a voice that carries the cadence of patience worn into bone. But we were easing our minds long before the calendar had opinions. You walk closer, drawn to his movements. He crushes the herbs gently, almost affectionately, and gestures to the smoke rising from the small fire pit in the middle of the room. It swirls upward like a pale ghost unfurling into freedom. Somewhere outside, a desert fox cries, its call rising like a question. The man tilts his head, listening. "She's hunting," he says softly. "Winter is coming early this year." His tone makes it clear that winter is not merely a season but an inconvenience that people will complain about for thousands of years, no matter how many layers of wool or technology they invent. You settle beside him. The warmth of the fire creeps into your skin, a slow tide of comfort. The smoke shifts colors, first blue, then gray, then a warm amber as the herbs burn. You inhale. The scent is earthy, peppery, and surprisingly sweet, like someone mixed basil, ancient philosophy, and a memory of sunshine. Historians still debate whether this mixture was ceremonial, medicinal, or just enjoyable, the man says. You appreciate how he looks directly at you when he speaks, as if you're part of a council meeting about the metaphysics of smoke. But every hearth tells a story. He reaches into a wooden box and pulls out a small bundle tied with fiber cord. "This plant," he says, "makes the spirit wander, makes the night soft, makes your mind forget that your neighbor borrowed your goat and never returned it." A laugh slips from you, not big, just a puff of amusement. Humor feels slower here, like everything else. Even the jokes seem carved from stone. He begins preparing a new mixture, and you notice each herb has a specific place in his process. One is pressed, one is crushed, one is sliced so thin it looks like it could drift away. "Nothing wasted," he says. "Not in a world where everything is borrowed from tomorrow." You glance toward the open doorway. The desert beyond glows faintly in the moonlight, dunes rolling like frozen waves. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint bells of a caravan. Maybe they're bringing spices, stories, or more herbs destined for smoky evenings like this one. "Sit," he says gently. "You travel with questions. Let the night answer them." So you sit, and the fire settles with a sigh. The man begins to speak in a tone so calm it could put even the most caffeinated modern human to sleep. Long before kingdoms were carved, long before bronze shaped the world, people burned plants to speak with spirits, to soothe pain, or simply to unwind after a particularly dramatic day of chasing goats. You nod again. You realize you have now nodded 5 times in this chapter, and you are officially part of his rhythm. "One fact remains," he continues, "and it is older than even our oldest tales. Ancient people knew the value of rest. There's your major historical fact for the section. Early humans across multiple cultures used psychoactive or aromatic plants in rituals and daily life, not only medicinally but for relaxation and communal bonding long before formal civilizations took shape. He mixes another handful of herbs and tosses them into the fire. The smoke blooms like a flower opening in slow motion. Curls around your hair, your shoulders, the edges of your awareness. And with it comes the memory of an earlier street, dusty and sunlit, the one you walked past near the market in the previous section. That same aroma from a merchant's stall returns, like a callback from the world, reminding you that everything in this story has roots. You breathe deeper. The man leans back on his heels. There was once a tribe who believed the smoke carried messages into the sky. There's your obscure tidbit, delivered casually, like a side dish of ancient lore. They thought if they burned the right mixture, the stars themselves would shimmer in response. Historians still debate whether the stars shimmered because of the ritual or because people stared at them long enough that their eyes simply got tired. He chuckles. You chuckle. The fire crackles again, as if it wants to be included in the joke. He gestures to the doorway. Come, let us walk outside. The night is growing wise. You rise slowly, your limbs loose, your mind floating just above the surface of thought. As you step through the doorway, the cool air greets you like an old friend, the kind who never asks why you haven't texted back yet. The sky is enormous. Stars spill across it like scattered grains of barley. You feel smaller in the best way, as though the world is big enough to carry your worries but gentle enough to lull them to sleep. The man stands beside you. Smoke is a bridge, he says quietly. Between worlds, between people, between thoughts. You tilt your head back, breathing in the silence. The desert fox cries again. The caravan bells jingle faintly. The herbs still cling to your senses. Remnants of ancient traditions that whisper across time. A warm breeze brushes your cheek, and you realize the night is no longer something you observe. It's something you're part of. The man turns to you. Come back inside when you are ready, he says. Some nights need time to settle. He slips back into the room, leaving you in the company of stars and drifting smoke. You exhale. Your breath forms a small cloud in the cool air. The night deepens, and you stand there, feeling the warmth behind you, the chill ahead of you, and a softness around you that feels like the beginning of understanding. Not just about when people began smoking weed, but why people have always reached for something that brings them closer to rest. The desert night wraps around you like a wool cloak borrowed from someone who definitely doesn't realize you've taken it. A soft breeze drifts over the dunes, carrying hints of sage, dust, and the faint lingering sweetness of the herbs the man burned earlier. You stand there long enough that time loses its edges. The stars above feel impossibly ancient, older than empires, older than stories, older even than the first person who looked up and said, "Ha, I bet the gods live up there." Eventually, the warm glow from the doorway behind you nudges at your back. You turn toward it, feeling the quiet invitation to return inside, though the night has such a gentle grip on you that you move slowly, almost reluctantly. Your footsteps press softly into the sand as you head back toward the stone threshold. The fire inside is dimmer now, its light flickering like the last thought before sleep. You can hear the man humming, a low, steady tune, rhythmic in a way that suggests the melody has traveled through centuries, picking up dust and wisdom as it went. When you re-enter the room, he doesn't look up. He simply sets another piece of dried herb onto a clay dish and says, "Good, you've returned." The night doesn't like to be observed too long. It gets shy. You sit once more, the cushions softer than you remember, their fibers warmed by the heat of the fire. The man hands you a small wooden cup filled with a warm liquid the color of sunset. You lift it to your lips. The taste is sharp, herbal, and oddly floral, like a tea made by someone who knows exactly what each plant wants to be when it grows up. It clears the lungs, he says. A tonic from the mountains, used by shepherds who spend too many nights singing to their goats. You nod slowly, because at this point nodding has become your primary communication strategy. A moment passes before he adds quietly, "We have records, old ones, of people burning these plants for cleansing. Not just the body, but the home, the tribe, the mind." There it is, your major historical fact for this section. Across the ancient world, cultures from Central Asia to the Near East burned cannabis and similar herbs not only for ritual but to purify spaces, treat ailments, and mark seasonal rites. He gestures to a bundle of dried leaves hanging overhead. "These are for midwinter," he explains, "to keep the cold spirits from settling into our bones." He pauses. "And to keep the children from complaining. Though nothing keeps children from complaining." You smile softly, sleepily. The fire crackles approvingly. After a stretch of silence long enough to feel like its own form of communication, the man begins to grind another set of herbs. This mixture smells different, earthier, deeper, like soil after rain. "This blend," he says, "is for storytelling." You raise an eyebrow. "Smoke is memory," he continues. "It rises from what was burned. Stories rise from what is lived. So when we blend them..." He trails off and wiggles his fingers like a magician, revealing absolutely nothing. He sets the herbs into the coals. They smolder slowly, releasing a smoke that drifts upward in lazy spirals. You watch it curl, stretch, and fade, like thoughts forming, lingering, and dissolving. The man settles across from you and begins weaving a tale. His voice is soft, dusted with age and patience. "Long before these sands, before my people walked this desert, travelers spoke of a northern tribe who used smoke to choose their leaders. They would sit in a circle, pass the burning herbs around, and then listen to whomever began speaking in riddles. They believed the riddler was touched by the spirits." He pauses. Historians still debate whether the tribe truly believed this or whether they simply enjoyed the riddles. You laugh quietly. You notice the smoke drifting toward the roof, gathering in the corners like tiny clouds that have lost their confidence. The man's eyes soften. "The world was simpler then," he says. "Not easier, but simpler. The nights belonged to stories. The days belonged to survival. The in-between belonged to the herbs." You feel a long, slow exhale leave your chest. Feels like you've been holding it since section 1. He continues speaking about old customs, some familiar, some strange, one involving a ritual dance that, from his description, sounds suspiciously like someone trying not to step on a snake. There's your obscure cultural tidbit for this section. An old nomadic group believed stepping on a snake during a ritual was an omen that the coming year would bring constant misunderstandings, which honestly tracks. The man finishes the story with a shrug so elegant it feels rehearsed. "People have always looked for meaning," he says. "In smoke, in dreams, in stars, in the shape of bird tracks." He taps the side of the cup he gave you. "And in drinks like this, though no one remembers why." You take another sip. Stronger this time, warmer. The firelight catches in the surface of the liquid, turning it into swirling gold. The man rises. "Come," he says. "There is something else to see." He walks toward a heavy curtain draped against the far wall. You follow, your senses softened, your steps slow. When he pulls the curtain aside, A narrow passage reveals itself, lit only by moonlight spilling in through a small opening overhead. You step in behind him. The stone walls are cool, the floor polished by countless feet. It smells faintly of earth, clay, and time. An aroma you're becoming deeply familiar with. This place, he says, is older than our tribe, older even than the city ruins you passed earlier. He places his palm on the wall. And here, people burned plants for reasons we still do not fully understand. You inhale sharply, not from fear but from awe. The idea that ancient people stood right where you're standing, burning herbs and sending their thoughts into the sky, feels strangely comforting. Like you're part of a lineage of wanderers and wanderers. The man's hand drifts away from the wall. Watch! He gestures toward a stone basin on the ground. He places a few wisps of the same herbs inside, strikes a spark, and soon a thin stream of smoke rises. It moves differently here, slower, smoother, like it respects the space. As you watch it swirl, your eyelids grow heavy. The man speaks softly. This place remembers everything. Every voice, every prayer, every question. You don't try to respond. You simply breathe, and the smoke curls upward, carrying the ancient world with it. The passage feels warmer now, though you're not sure whether it's the fire, the tea, or the simple fact that you're drifting deeper into the story like someone sinking into a very old, very dusty couch. One that somehow remains comfortable despite its questionable structural integrity. You sit on a stone ledge carved into the wall. The surface is cool but not unfriendly, as though the stone has accepted its fate as seating furniture for weary travelers. The man remains standing, silhouetted by moonlight. Do you know, he begins, that some ancient people believed smoke could open a door between worlds? Not a dramatic door, not one with lightning and roaring spirits, just a gentle door, like the flap of a tent invited open by the wind. He taps the basin with the herbs. Through this door, they said, memories travel, dreams travel, healing travels. You watch the smoke. It's thinner in this room, almost silky. It rises as though it knows exactly where it's going. Like someone walking to a kitchen at 2 a.m. for a snack. The man sits beside you. You have questions. Everyone does. That's why you followed the smoke instead of returning to your bed. He's right. You do have questions. They float around your mind like small lanterns, bumping gently into the edges of your thoughts. He folds his hands in his lap. People burned herbs for many reasons, he says, voice slow and steady. But the one reason shared across every tribe, every land, every century was simple. People needed comfort. You breathe out. The word comfort settles on your shoulders like warm sand. The man continues. Whether it was cannabis in Central Asia, frankincense in Arabia, or wild herbs in the Caucasus, people turned to plants when the world felt heavy. There's your major historical fact for this section. The earliest known instances of cannabis being burned in ritual contexts trace back to Central Asian cultures, whose burial sites contain braziers with chemical traces of THC-rich plants. He speaks it as if he's telling you where his aunt keeps her spice jars. A long, peaceful silence follows. Only the faint sound of desert wind drifting through the passage breaks it. Then he adds, there was once a belief, an old one, that the right smoke could carry wishes upward, toward the sky. There's your obscure cultural tidbit. They would whisper into the smoke, then let it drift away. They said the sky listened more closely at night. You look upward, almost giving the sky a polite nod of acknowledgement. The man rises slowly and walks a few steps farther down the passage. You follow him, feeling the silence thicken like honey around your ankles. The space widens into a small chamber. In the center stands a stone pillar carved with swirling patterns that look like wind, fire, and maybe, if you tilt your head, smoke. This place, he whispers, is where the first storytellers Saturday. You run your hand across the pillar. The carvings feel shallow yet intentional, like they were made by someone who knew stories outlive people. People once gathered here, he says, bringing herbs, fire, tales, and fears. They burned them all together, and the stories lifted the fears upward. He traces one groove in the stone with his finger. Historians still debate whether these rituals were about the herbs, the smoke, or simply the company of people gathered around a shared fire. A soft laugh escapes your throat. You're starting to appreciate how often historians debate things. He gestures for you to sit again. You do. The stone chamber feels like it's hugging you, quietly without making it weird. As he prepares another small mixture of herbs, you notice your thoughts drifting. Not away from the story, but deeper into it, like a dream you don't fully control but are happy to watch unfold. The man lights the herbs. Smoke unfurls slowly, dancing in the air. He says, almost whispering, smoke anchors the moment. It gives memory something to hold on to. You close your eyes. You feel the air warm your cheeks. You hear the faint hum of insects outside. You smell the sweet earthiness of the herbs. You sense the calm settling into your bones like a gentle instruction from time itself. And then, softly, without opening your eyes, you hear the man say, the night is patient. It will wait with you. And it does. The smoke rises. The ancient chamber listens. And you drift deeper into the story. You wake to the feeling of time stretching like warm taffy, pulling itself gently across the morning. The valley around you is still, as if it too has decided to sleep in a bit. You sit up, the woven mat beneath you rustling softly, and for a moment you're convinced you must have wandered into the world's earliest wellness retreat. The birds chirp on cue. The breeze smells like growing things. And somewhere in the distance, a goat bleats as if it's been paid to provide ambience. You breathe in slow and even. The green hills breathe with you. Everything feels calm enough that even your modern phone, if it existed here, might politely turn on Do Not Disturb out of respect. You've spent several days moving through this ancient world of plants, rituals, and smoke, and you sense you're slowly blending into it, becoming another traveler whose footsteps the soil quietly accepts without complaint. Maybe that's what this place does to people. It asks you to slow down, to blend in, to remember that the earth has been growing things long before humans learned to argue about who owned what. As you rise, you feel a softness behind your eyes, a cozy heaviness in your limbs, a warm sensation that says, you are finally adjusting. Or possibly you slept on your arm funny. Hard to say. You walk toward the center of the camp where a small group is gathered. They're preparing something, bundles of green and brown plants being tied with thin strips of reed. One of the women holds up a bundle for you to see. The leaves are serrated, pointed, familiar. Too familiar. You raise an eyebrow, and she smiles knowingly. The way someone smiles when they know you're pretending something is new even though the look on your face gives everything away. She hands you the bundle, and for a moment the world smells sharp and sweet at the same time. The major historical fact for this section unfolds itself gently. Archaeologists discovered burned cannabis seeds in burial sites from the Iron Age, suggesting ancient Europeans may have used cannabis both ritualistically and medicinally. Not that anyone here feels the need to announce it. They simply live it. Nearby, A pair of elders start chanting. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a low hum like bees warming themselves. The younger members of the group pack the bundles into clay bowls. Steam rises from one of them, and the scent changes, earthier now, richer, as if the plants themselves are telling old stories. One man gestures for you to sit beside a pot. You do. The heat warms your knees. The smoke curls upward like the slow handwriting of the sky. You watch as it moves in loops and spirals, reminding you faintly of your own thoughts when you try to remember where you put your keys. A young girl sits next to you and whispers something. You don't understand the words, but the tone suggests she's telling you not to touch the pot. You lean back slightly. She nods approvingly. A moment later, she adds another line in a tone that could be interpreted as, "People always try to touch the pot." You grin. She grins back. Here comes your obscure cultural tidbit for the day. Some early Eurasian tribes believed smoke carried prayers upward, but they also used aromatic herbs, sometimes cannabis, sometimes not, to keep spirits or wandering energies from getting confused and going home with the wrong person. A sort of ancient cosmic passenger control. Historians still debate whether the rituals were more about healing, cleansing, communication, or simply enjoying the subtle shift in atmosphere that smoke could bring. But the truth, like the smoke rising now, tends to drift just out of reach. A soft breeze moves through the clearing. The smoke wavers, then settles again. The chanting slows. The girl beside you yawns and leans her head against her knees. For a moment, the entire world feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for something quiet and gentle and inevitable. And when it comes, it is nothing more than the feeling of peace. The sense of sitting exactly where you're meant to be. You let your eyes close, just for a moment, just long enough to let the stillness settle into your bones. You probably won't make it through this day without drifting off, honestly. One of the elders taps your shoulder lightly, and you blink awake. She smiles. You smile. No words. None are needed. She gestures for you to follow her, and as you stand, the smoke clings to your clothes like soft memory. You walk, and the earth carries your footsteps gently toward the next part of this slow, unfolding world. And the valley breathes with you. You walk through the valley until the land begins to rise beneath your feet, the hills pulling upward into soft, rolling shoulders. In the distance, you hear something faint, bells or chimes, or maybe metal bowls clinking softly against one another. You follow the sound because that's what you do now. You follow sounds like a fox following the promise of a distant chicken. The path winds upward, and soon you see it. A long caravan moving slowly across the ridge. Camels, horses, and people wrapped in layers of patterned fabric. Their silhouettes ripple like flags in the long morning light. They see you and they don't seem alarmed. Mostly because you look like someone who wandered off a guided meditation app. A tall man waves you over. The closer you get, the more you notice the smell, spices, cloth, resin, and the unmistakable note of plants that traveled far from somewhere warm and dry. He greets you with a smile so wide you briefly consider the possibility that he invented hospitality. He introduces you to his caravan, traders moving along what will later be called branches of the Silk Road. Their goods are wrapped up and tied down, but from the corners you see hints of metalwork, glazed pottery, herbal bundles, seeds, and tall stalks that look suspiciously like dried cannabis plants. You raise a brow again. He laughs, a belly-deep, generous sound that suggests this happens often. He hands you a woven pouch. Inside are seeds, small, smooth, dark. He tells you these seeds traveled from far eastern regions where the plant grows tall and proud, and that some travelers have carried them west for centuries. The exact origins? Well, historians still debate whether the earliest domestication happened in Central Asia, East Asia, or somewhere nobody bothered to write down. You tuck the pouch into your belt as if you've just been entrusted with something sacred. Or snacks. Hard to say. As you walk beside the caravan, someone begins playing a stringed instrument with only 2 strings. The melody is slow, drifting like desert wind. Someone else beats a frame drum with fingertips so gentle it sounds like distant footsteps. A young man offers you a small clay pipe carved with simple geometric designs. You shake your head, partly out of politeness, partly because your lungs are still processing the smoke from the previous ritual. He shrugs, respectful, then takes a long, practiced inhale of something that smells earthy and strong. Here comes your major historical fact for this section. Textual records from ancient China describe cannabis being used medicinally and ritualistically as early as the 2nd millennium BCE, including references attributed to the legendary Emperor Shennong. These travelers carry remnants of that heritage: bundles of dried plant, tiny jars of oil, powders, seeds, woven fibers. Your obscure cultural tidbit. Some caravans believed burning small amounts of cannabis around camp kept scorpions away, not because the smoke actually repelled them, but because people felt braver when the air felt warm and friendly. Confidence is apparently a powerful scorpion deterrent. You watch the people work, tying knots, adjusting loads, checking straps. They move like a single organism, practiced and rhythmic. The bells on the camels' harnesses ring softly with each step. You feel yourself falling into the rhythm of it, like the sway of a boat, or the hum of a train, or the steady breathing of someone you trust. You glance behind you. The valley you left is almost hidden now. The world shifts shape when you move through it, folding behind you, opening ahead of you. Maybe that's how this ancient world keeps its stories. Always shifting, always retelling itself. The caravan pauses near a rocky outcrop where the wind has carved shapes into the stone. Arches, hollows, smooth curves that look almost intentional. People sit, eat, rest. Someone hands you a bowl of something warm: grains, herbs, a bit of dried fruit. You take a bite and nearly sigh out loud. It tastes like the kind of breakfast you eat on a morning when nothing can go wrong. One of the women sits beside you, weaving something with fast, nimble fingers. She tells you, through gestures and smiles, that her people have carried and traded cannabis for generations, not as a recreational pastime, but as a plant of fiber, medicine, ritual, and comfort. A plant that can be woven, worn, burned, eaten, or treasured. You sit with her for a while, watching her hands move. The wind hums against the rocks. Someone laughs softly. Someone sings a melody that seems to loop back on itself like a dream you half remember. A camel chews thoughtfully beside you, offering the occasional approving grunt at your resting posture. And here's your light joke for the moment. The camel seems to be judging you slightly less than most humans you've met. As the caravan prepares to move again, the tall man who greeted you earlier places a hand on your shoulder. He tells you, in a voice like warm sand, that journeys are long, and people need softness along the road. Soft words, soft smoke, soft music. Whether your softness comes from a cup of tea, a quiet moment, or a little herbal drift is up to you. You thank him. He nods. And with that, the caravan moves on. Bells chiming, fabrics fluttering, dust rising in soft clouds beneath the hooves. You remain on the ridge for a moment, watching them disappear into the long golden light. Then, slowly, peacefully, you turn and continue your own journey. You continue along the ridge until the land slopes downward again, smoothing itself into a wide basin tucked between low mountains. From a distance, the basin looks like a green bowl, lush, layered, and quietly humming with life. You descend toward it as if following a melody only you can hear, the kind that sounds like someone softly stirring warm tea. The air changes the moment you enter the basin. It's warmer here, wetter too, as though the world has cupped this valley in both hands to keep it safe. The scent of herbs is everywhere, fresh, sharp, drying, sweet. And then, drifting in and out like a shy guest at a dinner party, the faint but unmistakable scent of cannabis plants growing nearby. You walk through rows of earth mounded with intention. Some plants are tall. Some are tiny. Some look like they've been tended by hands that know them intimately. And others seem to be thriving simply because no one has told them they shouldn't. You pause beside a cluster of women and men crouching over a bed of herbs. They wear simple linen garments, the kind dyed with plants rather than expensive pigments. They look up at you with nods, not surprised, not worried. More like you've arrived slightly late to a group project, and they've decided to accept it. One of the healers gestures for you to kneel beside her. Her hands are stained green from plant sap. She takes a clay bowl filled with crushed leaves and roots and lets you smell it. The aroma rises like steam from an ancient kitchen, pungent, earthy, with a hint of something spicy. The healer taps the bowl, points to a plant behind her, and then presses her palm lightly over her heart. A universal sign, medicine. Here's your major historical fact for the section. Ancient medical texts from China, India, and parts of the Middle East describe cannabis as a remedy for pain, inflammation, and even digestive issues. Some early physicians mixed it with wine, milk, or oils to create medicinal tinctures. You watch as the healers grind, stir, heat, and mix herbs in ways that look almost like choreography. Every motion seems deliberate, each movement passed down from someone who taught someone long before written records cared to mention it. You're handed a small cup of warm herbal infusion, not intoxicating, not overwhelming, just soothing. The kind of drink that hugs your insides and says, "Hey, I know things have been a lot lately. Let's calm down." You sip, and your shoulders lower at least 3 centimeters without permission. As you sit, a younger apprentice approaches. She's carrying a stack of wooden tablets carved with lines and symbols. She explains, using gestures and a few recognizable words, that these are records, recipes, observations, treatments. But some of the symbols are older than memory, passed down so many times that no one fully understands their original meaning. She shrugs with a smile. Historians still debate whether some of these symbols reference cannabis specifically, or whether ancient healers simply lumped multiple herbs together under broad categories like warming plants or cooling plants. Either way, the meaning here seems to come more from hands-on practice than precise terminology. As afternoon settles in, the basin becomes a quiet world of its own. Birds flit through the trees. A few goats graze lazily, deeply invested in pretending to be useful. Apprentices carry water from a nearby spring, and the healers sit together weaving fibers from hemp stalks, talking softly, sharing food, occasionally laughing at jokes you wish you understood. Here comes your obscure cultural tidbit. Some ancient healers believed that hemp fibers carried protective energy, so they braided them into belts, amulets, and even the edges of blankets meant for newborns. A charming mixture of practicality and superstition, which, honestly, describes a good portion of human history. You lean back on your hands. The earth is warm beneath you. The sun sinks slowly behind the ridge, turning the basin into a bowl of amber light. The healers begin lighting small clay lamps, placing them along the paths. The flicker of fire mixes with the smell of herbs, giving the valley a golden, sleepy glow. One healer sits beside you and offers a piece of flatbread smeared with honey and herbs. You take a bite. Tastes like everything around you, sweet, earthy, grounding. The kind of food that makes you feel connected to soil and sky and the long chain of humans who learned how to take care of one another. You linger as the valley dims into twilight, but eventually, gently, you rise. The healers wave goodbye in that soft, welcoming way that suggests you're always free to return. And as you walk out of the basin, you feel lighter, softer, more rooted than you have in days. Night has nearly settled by the time you reach the river. Its waters move slowly, glimmering like dark silk under the rising moon. You walk along its edge, brushing your fingers against reeds and grasses that whisper as you pass. A frog croaks somewhere nearby, possibly complaining about your presence. You decide to respect its opinion. The river is wide enough to demand attention, but calm enough to reassure you that no sudden surprises are waiting beneath its surface. The reflection of the moon breaks and reforms with each ripple, as if the sky itself is practicing deep breathing exercises. A small settlement sits along the riverbank, just a handful of huts made from wood and clay. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, rising like sleepy thoughts drifting upward into the night. People sit around a fire, weaving baskets, repairing tools, sharing the kind of quiet conversation that only happens at the end of a long day. They invite you to join them without hesitation, perhaps because you look as tired as they feel, or perhaps because this world seems to operate on the unspoken belief that travelers carry stories worth hearing. You sit beside a man mending a fishing net. His hands move with habitual grace, looping fiber in and out with the casual expertise of someone who has done this every evening for decades. He nods at you, then at the fire, then at the river, as though all three are longtime friends who politely require acknowledgement. A woman stirs a pot of something warm over the fire, and the aroma is gentle and earthy with a hint of roasted seeds. You wonder if cannabis seeds might be part of the recipe. She gives you a knowing smile. You suddenly feel very seen. Here comes your major historical fact. Cannabis seeds were often used as food in ancient cultures, from porridge to roasted snacks, because they were nutritious, long-lasting, and easy to store for winter. They weren't necessarily psychoactive, but they became a regular part of many diets. The woman hands you a bowl. You taste it. The surprisingly pleasant, nutty, warm, comforting. The kind of food that tastes like it was invented on a cold night out of pure determination. A few children sit nearby playing a game with carved wooden pieces. One piece looks suspiciously like a stylized hemp leaf. You raise an eyebrow. They laugh as though you've caught them doing something mildly rebellious. Your obscure cultural tidbit arrives courtesy of an older man sitting on a log. Some river communities believed the fibers of hemp carried the memory of the river itself, because the plants thrived in damp soil. They used hemp ropes for fishing, convinced that the river recognized them and rewarded them with better catches. A charming superstition, and honestly, you admire the creativity. You listen as the people talk about the river, the floods, the fish, the calm days, the days when the water ran thick with mud after a storm. The river, to them, is a living being, a companion, a moody one, perhaps, but still beloved. Historians still debate whether the symbolic connection between rivers and cannabis farming emerged from necessity, spirituality, or pure coincidence. But sitting here, with the sound of water and the warmth of the fire blending into one gentle breath, you can see why people believed rivers carried memories. One of the younger men passes around a small clay pipe. A few people take a puff, exhaling slowly, letting the smoke drift upward like a mild prayer. They're not doing it to celebrate, not to party, just to breathe, to soften the edges of the night. You're offered the pipe, but you politely pass. You're still very relaxed from earlier, and from the porridge. A small dog curls up beside you unexpectedly, placing its head on your knee as if declaring you part of the community. You accept this promotion. A woman begins humming a lullaby, a slow, winding tune that matches the river's rhythm. The fire crackles. The moon drifts higher. The world grows quieter, softer, as though preparing to wrap itself in its own blanket. And in this moment, you feel the river remembering everything. Every traveler, every plant grown along its banks, every night when people gathered and shared warmth beneath the sky. You sit a while longer. The dog snores softly. The river hums. The fire sighs. Eventually, you stand, stretching slowly, waving goodbye to the friendly faces. You follow the riverbank further into the night, guided by the moon's pale path. And the river walks with you. You follow the river until dawn brushes the sky with the faintest strokes of pale gold, the kind of color that looks like the sun is still deciding whether it's worth the effort to rise today. You can relate. Birdsong begins slowly, just one or two early voices, then grows into a murmuring chorus as you walk. The river narrows, threading itself between rolling hills. Mist clings to the grass in soft ribbons, and every breath you take feels like inhaling cool silk. Eventually, you hear the faint jingle of metal, then the soft grunt of animals, and finally, the unmistakable creak of wooden wheels carrying far too much weight. A caravan appears as you crest a hill. Camels, donkeys, and oxen plodding patiently along the dirt path. Their handlers walk beside them, wrapped in heavy shawls that sway with each step. The caravan looks worn but determined, like a group of people who have marched through more landscapes than most maps even bother to acknowledge. One of the traders waves you closer. He has kind eyes, a sun-cracked smile, and clothes dusted with the fine powder of a dozen deserts. He speaks in a blend of gestures, fragments of languages, and a surprising amount of eyebrow communication that you somehow understand perfectly. He opens a chest and invites you to look. Inside are small bundles wrapped in fiber cloth. Some are herbs, some spices, some are unfamiliar pellets the color of polished earth. And there, tucked in one corner, is a pressed brick made of seeds and dried leaves, compact as if someone squeezed an entire garden into a single weight. You recognize it. The trader gestures toward the river, the hills, the long road behind him. He mimes grinding, heating, inhaling, and then exhaling in a slow, almost meditative puff. Here's your major historical fact for this section. Caravans traveling along early trade routes, especially through Central Asia, transported cannabis products, both medicinal and ritualistic, linking distant cultures long before formal empires even knew each other's names. The trader offers you a dried fruit instead. You accept because it seems safer for your already relaxed brain. The sweet, tangy, and slightly gritty, like nature's version of a candy that doesn't want to fully commit. As you continue walking alongside the caravan, you notice the variety of objects strapped to the animals. Bales of wool, polished bone tools, coils of rope, jars sealed with wax, carved amulets, even a stack of folded cloth dyed with deep indigo that shimmers beautifully in the morning sun. A young apprentice carrying a sack nearly twice his size stops to show you something unusual. A woven satchel made from hemp fibers dyed in red and blue. The pattern is intricate, symmetrical, and slightly dizzying if you look at it too long. He proudly taps his chest to indicate that he made it himself. Here comes your obscure cultural tidbit. Some ancient caravans used hemp rope not only for fastening goods, but also as makeshift musical instruments, tightened and plucked to create twanging rhythms during long nights on the road. You picture a group of tired travelers playing rope harp music at dusk and decide humans have always been delightfully inventive when bored. The caravan pauses near a cluster of trees to rest. You all sit together, sharing food and warm drinks. Someone passes around a small pouch filled with a fragrant powder. A few traders sprinkle it onto hot stones, letting the smoke drift upward. They breathe it in gently, almost ceremonially. Historians still debate whether ancient caravans used cannabis primarily for ritual, medicine, or simply entertainment on long journeys across unforgiving landscapes. Listening to the quiet sighs of the traders as the smoke curls into the air, you suspect the answer is probably all of the above. A camel beside you sneezes suddenly, showering dust in all directions. Someone mutters something that was probably a medieval insult. You nod sympathetically. Camels do tend to personalize their grievances. As the caravan prepares to move on, the trader with kind eyes places a small woven token in your hand, a charm made from braided hemp and a single bead. He points to your chest, then to the horizon, then gives a little bow. You bow back, feeling oddly honored to receive a travel blessing from someone who has clearly walked more miles than entire kingdoms. The caravan continues eastward, bells jingling softly, wheels creaking rhythmically, footsteps merging with dust and wind. You watch them fade into the distance, then turn south, following your own path as morning becomes full day. The land grows quieter as you walk. Birds still sing. Wind still rustles through grass. But there's a deeper quiet beneath it all. A kind of intentional calm that makes you slow your steps without realizing why. Eventually, tucked into a rocky hillside, you see a structure rising like a natural extension of the earth. Stone walls smooth and pale. A wooden gate reinforced with thick hemp ropes. And carved above the entrance, in looping, delicate symbols, something that looks like a prayer. You stand at the threshold of a sanctuary. A figure greets you, an elder wrapped in layered robes of soft browns and soft greens, colors that blend with the surroundings so seamlessly you suspect they chose them on purpose. Their face is lined in the gentle way that suggests a lifetime of thinking deeply and worrying minimally. They gesture for you to follow. Inside the sanctuary, the air is warm and fragrant. You pass through a hall lined with woven mats, carved wooden benches, and alcoves holding clay bowls filled with dried herbs. The lighting is soft, oil lamps shaped like blooming flowers cast warm pools of gold across the stone floor. You're led into a courtyard that feels impossibly peaceful. A single tree stands at the center, its branches curved like open arms. Around its base, several people sit in silent meditation. Their breathing is slow, steady, like waves brushing against shore. The elder offers you a cup of warm drink, earthy, floral, lightly sweet. You sip it and feel tension leaving your muscles with suspicious efficiency. Your major historical fact for this section. Several ancient spiritual communities, from early Hindu ascetics to certain Middle Eastern mystic groups, used cannabis preparations in ritual settings to slow the mind and deepen meditation. Their use wasn't about escape, it was about attentiveness. You sit beside the meditating group, unsure whether you're supposed to join them or simply observe. The elder settles near you, placing a palm gently on the stone floor to indicate grounding. You mimic their position. Close your eyes. Breathe. For the first time in days, your thoughts stop racing in figure-8 patterns. Everything softens, slows, settles. You become aware of the tree's leaves rustling overhead, the faint trickle of water nearby, someone's calm inhale-exhale rhythm that matches your own surprisingly well. The world feels steady. You open your eyes eventually and are handed a small wooden token etched with a symbol that resembles a blooming plant. The elder nods as though confirming that yes, you're allowed to keep it, and no, they won't test you on its meaning later. Your obscure cultural tidbit arrives in a whisper from another practitioner. Some early monastic groups believed hemp smoke carried prayers upward faster, like a spiritual express lane for the very patient. You're honestly impressed by the combination of devotion and logistical innovation. As afternoon light filters through the courtyard, the elder leads you deeper into the sanctuary. You see shelves filled with scrolls, some cracked with age. You see herb gardens arranged in careful geometric patterns. You see bowls of dried flowers, seeds, resins, each labeled in a language that looks older than time. Historians still debate whether sanctuaries like this one primarily cultivated cannabis for ritual, medicine, weaving, or contemplation. But here, surrounded by stillness, you suspect the answer is yes, all of it. A gentle gong sounds. The practitioners gather near the tree for another period of meditation. You stand with them for a moment, feeling the air shift around you, the calm deepen. Something inside you loosens, a knot you didn't realize you'd been carrying. Eventually, the elder walks you to the exit. They bow. You bow. And as you step outside, the breeze hits your face with the soft, cool touch of evening arriving. You walk onward, carrying the quiet with you like a small, steady flame. You wake the next morning to the soft scrape of parchment, as though someone is sanding a tree in slow motion. The sound threads through the hallway like a whisper, guiding you toward a narrow room with tall windows, a tilted desk, and a man who looks like his soul has been fused permanently to a quill. You step inside. The scholar doesn't greet you. Scholars rarely do. They act like greetings are optional, reserved for people who aren't busy preserving civilization. He mutters without looking up, "Close the door. The draft offends my ink." You comply gently. He sighs as though you just saved his life. You stand behind him, watching the quill scratch across the page. His handwriting is immaculate. Each letter stands at perfect attention. You half expect them to salute. The room smells of dried herbs, candle wax, and that mild despair unique to men who have voluntarily chosen to write everything down. He finally speaks. "You'll be wanting knowledge," he says flatly. "Because everyone does." You nod, though he still isn't looking. "Very well. Sit quietly, preferably without breathing too hard." You sit on a creaky wooden bench that definitely predates optimism. The scholar pushes his spectacles up the bridge of his nose and lectures in the slow, droning tone of someone who has spent years realizing the world is barely interested in accuracy. He begins with a historical fact because he can't help himself. In ancient Central Asia, people were using cannabis in ritual fires at least 2,500 years ago, probably longer. The evidence is Smoky. He pauses, satisfied with himself. Then he adds a stranger detail. In one region, mourners would stand inside tents filled with aromatic smoke during funerary rites. Not exactly a spa, but it probably worked. You imagine someone grieving and also mildly high and think, yes, humanity is consistent. The scholar rubs his temples. Historians still debate whether the practice was meant to induce visions or simply to make the experience more tolerable. Much as scholars still debate why students refuse to read instructions. His gaze lands on you at last, assessing you like you're a footnote he doesn't fully trust. You ask him a question. You're not sure which question. Maybe, why do people seek altered states? Or maybe, why is your room so dusty? He ignores whichever one you asked and instead begins rummaging through scrolls. A parchment unfurls dramatically, like it's been waiting centuries for its big moment. He taps it. Trade routes, he says. Everything spreads through trade routes. Spice, silk, questionable habits. Culture is basically a long line of people saying, "Hey, try this." He clears his throat with theatrical weariness. Some customs survive because they're useful, he continues. Others survive because humans are sentimental, stubborn, or bored. He stares pointedly at a stack of half-copied manuscripts. Some survive because the scribe got tired and didn't feel like starting over. A long silence stretches between you, softened by the birdsong beyond the window. Finally he sighs. Go on, walk the town again. Learn something. Break nothing. And if anyone asks, tell them knowledge comes at a price. You ask what the price is. He shrugs. Oh, one good story. He sends you out into the hallway with a dismissive flick of his quill, as though you were simply another idea he didn't need right now. You return to the corridor, walking toward the sunlight, thinking about rituals, habits, and how much of life is just humans trying to make things feel a little easier, stranger, or more meaningful. Your pace slows, comfortable. The scholar's voice drifts faintly down the hall. And close the door properly this time. Another medieval callback. Doors, once again, are a recurring challenge. You descend the same stone steps you climbed yesterday. Still uneven, still disapproving of your modern ankles, and emerge into the town square. Morning light spills across the stalls like warm milk. The market is already alive. Merchants shouting polished half-truths, chickens arguing with the universe, while traders insisting their wool is the softest, even though it definitely isn't. You wander past woven baskets, jars of honey, and what can only be described as vegetables shaped by spite. And then you encounter a vendor whose stall smells unmistakably herbal. She's a woman with a wide grin, arms folded, eyes sparkling with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what she's selling, even if everyone else pretends not to. You look like someone who enjoys curiosities, she says. You raise an eyebrow. Things that soothe, she adds. Things that calm the mind. Things the clergy pretend not to know about. She lifts a small clay pot with an exaggerated flourish. Inside is a crumbled, dried plant that smells earthy, resinous, and ancient in a way your nose can't fully place. She winks. This little treasure traveled farther than most kings ever will. She taps the pot knowingly. One historical fact for you, traveler. It was the Scythians, warrior folks on horseback, who famously inhaled cannabis smoke in enclosed tents. They described it as pleasantly affecting, which might be history's earliest product review. You lean closer. The scent really is soothing, but she shakes her head. No touching, not unless you're buying. And not unless you promise you won't do something silly like trying to ride a sheep afterward. A goat bleats nearby, possibly offended. She gestures toward a set of small drawings pinned to the back of her stall. Tiny illuminated-style illustrations of people heating herbs, sharing smoke, or using them in baths. Here's a rare tidbit, she says. Some medieval bathhouses mixed aromatic herbs into the steam to make the experience more luxurious. Not always cannabis, but occasionally something stronger. Bathhouse attendants claimed it relaxed the muscles, or the soul. Interpretations varied. She lowers her voice. Historians still debate whether people actually felt calmer, or simply enjoyed having an excuse to sit around in warm water gossiping. You smile at that. You continue through the bustling square. A child runs past you carrying a loaf of bread longer than he is tall. A dog trots proudly after him, hoping gravity will solve its problems. As you walk, you pass a familiar street, the same one from earlier journeys, the one where laundry forever flaps like medieval flags of domestic perseverance. You keep going until the noise of the market softens into a hum behind you. You reach a quiet corner where sunlight filters through vines. A gentle breeze moves through leaves, carrying the faint echoes of merchants shouting about bargains that definitely aren't bargains. You sit on a low stone wall, letting your shoulders relax. The day drifts around you peacefully, filled with scents, distant voices, subtle wonders, and the strange, enduring human urge to experience the world differently. Whether through ritual smoke, warm baths, storytelling, or simply slowing down long enough to breathe, a rooster crows somewhere in the distance, late to work again. You watch the sky, calm and open. You think, not for the first time, how familiar these ancient habits feel, as if people have always been doing their best to get comfortable in a confusing world. You move deeper into the long, amber-lit corridor of time, as though it's a hallway built out of memories you didn't know you had. The air is warm, a little hazy, and smells faintly of crushed leaves, old parchment, and the kind of incense people burn when they're trying to look more spiritual than they actually are. Your footsteps feel soft, muffled, like you're walking on centuries of quiet conversations layered into the floor. The place you're in now looks like a crossroads, not a physical one, but a cultural one. Ideas filter in from everywhere you've been so far. Fires flicker in distant corners, and shadows imitate people who haven't been alive for a very long time. You feel oddly at home here, maybe a little too at home, considering you were technically wandering inside history's attic without a map or permission. A soft voice drifts toward you, just barely above a whisper, as if someone is reading from a very old book. You can't make out the words yet, but they sound ancient, comfortable, a bit judgmental, honestly, but ancient texts tend to be that way, always acting like they invented morality. You follow the sound. It leads you to a low room with reed mats on the floor and walls painted with long, curling botanical designs. They're stylized vines and leaves. Some look suspiciously familiar. You tilt your head. Yes, that leaf. The same one people like to print on sweatshirts and stick on water bottles today. Here it appears with much more dignity. A small group sits together around a shallow bronze brazier glowing like a little sun. They're heating something in clay bowls, leaning close, inhaling the rising vapors in deliberate, meditative breaths. The scene feels peaceful, slow, almost ceremonial. You kneel, instinctively adjusting to their rhythm. One of the elders looks at you with kind eyes that suggest she's completely aware you're not from here, and equally aware that it doesn't matter. She presses a clay cup into your hands. The steam smells earthy, green, a little sharp. For clarity, she murmurs. You take a breath. History does not require you to actually drink whatever she just handed you, but the steam alone feels grounding, like it's coaxing your thoughts into long, gentle waves. This must be another cultural moment in humanity's lengthy relationship with the plant, one of the quieter ones, the ones that happen outside the spotlight of war and trade and drama. People gathered like this for thousands of years, using heated herbs not to get lit, as the modern phrase goes, but to see the world a different way, or sometimes just to slow down enough to remember they were alive. A major historical fact drifts through your mind as naturally as the steam. Cannabis was used in vapor or incense form in many early societies long before smoking pipes became common. Sometimes the past feels like it's whispering truths in your ear just for fun. The elder gestures to the wall paintings. The vine connects people, she says. We breathe it in so we may see each other more clearly. This might be the calmest peer pressure situation you've ever been in. Someone next to you chuckles, a quiet, sleepy sound, and says, "It also helps with your back." It's hard to tell whether they're joking or dead serious. Honestly, both seem plausible. Being alive back then did sound like a series of unending back problems. You take another inhale of the warmed, aromatic vapor rising from your cup. The room seems to hum softly, not in a magical way, just in the way that spaces hum when everyone inside them is fully present. There's a strange comfort here, and perhaps an even stranger familiarity. You're beginning to realize that every culture you visited in this long wandering journey had its own way of pausing the world, its own way of taking a breath, its own recipe for easing the human condition, which, let's be honest, did not come with a user manual. You feel the warmth behind your eyes, the slow, steady breath of the group around you. Then the elder says something unexpected. Historians still debate whether gatherings like ours were religious, medicinal, or simply social. You blink. You weren't expecting academic commentary mid-ritual, but here it is, delivered with a calm smile, as if she's been interviewed by documentaries for centuries. Someone nudges the brazier with a carved wooden stick, and a swirl of fragrant vapor drifts upward, curling toward a small opening in the roof. A vent, perfectly designed chimney, and yet another reminder that humans always found ways to control smoke because nobody enjoyed coughing their way through sacred rituals. You shift slightly and your elbow brushes a small stack of polished stones arranged like a game board. The person beside you leans in and whispers, "It's a guessing game. You lose, you have to sweep the mat." You raise an eyebrow. Medieval chores were apparently universal. The entire room continues its soft breathing rhythm. Warm inhale, long exhale, rustle of robes, crackle of heat. The soundscape is so soothing that your shoulders start sinking lower, like they're drifting into a hot bath. Someone lightly strums a single-string instrument in the corner. The tone is mellow, earthy, like it's made from the same plant as everything else in this room. Maybe it is. Humanity was nothing if not consistent in its resourcefulness. You run your fingertips along the clay cup, smooth, warm, filled with the scent of ancient calm, and for a moment you feel suspended between worlds. People here used the plant for clarity. Others used it for celebration. Others for pain. Others for curiosity. Humans always looked for connection, whether to each other, the world, or just the inside of their own minds. You lean back, listening to the slow beats of the instrument. Somewhere outside, wind presses against the old walls, making them creak like a ship adrift on dusk-colored waves. The elder speaks again. "You are walking far," she says gently, as if she can see your entire journey behind your eyes. "You must learn to breathe with the world, not ahead of it." It's good advice. You file it somewhere between "get more sleep" and "don't trust people who say, 'trust me,' before giving directions." As you sit there, absorbing the moment, you notice a small stack of woven baskets near the corner. Each basket is filled with dried herbs, some familiar, some not. One basket holds leaves shaped like little stars. Another holds long stems braided together. A third contains tiny seeds that glint like beads. You lift one of the braided stems. The person next to you murmurs, "Those are used in winter to ward off bad dreams." You nod. Humans have been fighting bad dreams since the dawn of time. Unsurprisingly, Herbs often got pulled into the battle. And here lies your obscure cultural tidbit for this section. Some early communities braided cannabis stalk fibers into charms believed to keep away restless spirits during the coldest nights. It sounds superstitious, but also kind of comforting. Something about sleeping next to a bundle of braided plant fibers feels like being hugged by a very optimistic rope. The elder's eyes soften. "You are welcome to rest here," she says. "The journey is long. Time stretches differently when you move through memory. You feel it, your limbs heavier, your mind drifting. Not in a dizzy way, but in a deeply relaxed, history has you in a blanket way. When you close your eyes for just a moment, the warmth of the brazier radiates through your chest like a second heartbeat. You breathe. The group breathes with you. And then, gently, almost imperceptibly, you feel yourself shifting again. Like the room is dissolving not because you're leaving it, but because it's gifting you onward, sending you deeper into the story you've been walking through. The painted vines on the wall unfurl and soften into shadows. The reed mat beneath you becomes the texture of grass. The brazier's glow turns into sunlight filtered through ancient trees. And you feel yourself drifting toward the next chapter. Slowly, softly, as though history itself is rocking you forward. The sunlight filtering through the trees feels different from the warmth of the brazier you just left behind, but it carries the same sense of gentle invitation. You blink slowly, letting your vision adjust, and the world around you becomes clearer, though not too clear. History enjoys keeping a soft focus, as if it prefers being remembered like an old painting rather than a high-definition photograph. You stand on a narrow forest path. The ground is soft beneath your feet, padded with fallen leaves in shades of honey, bronze, and muted green. You breathe in deep, and the air tastes like pine, cool water, and a hint of something fragrant that clings to your senses the way certain memories cling to old rooms. Ahead, the trees part just enough to create a small clearing where pale smoke spirals upward in slow, unhurried ribbons. The smoke isn't thick. It's lazy, drifting like it has nowhere to be and all the time in the world to get there. A few figures sit around a low fire made from tightly packed twigs and dried herbs. The flames glow a soft amber, barely taller than your hand. These people sit differently than the group you left before. Their posture is straighter, more ceremonial. Their faces are calm in the way librarians look calm, serene but hiding strong opinions. One of them looks up and nods at you, a subtle but welcoming gesture that essentially says, "You can join us, but quietly. We're trying to look mysterious." You step closer. The group is arranged in a circle, each person holding a small carved wooden tube. The tubes are decorated with intricate designs, spirals, waves, and tiny birds. You kneel down at the edge of the circle. Someone hands you a tube with a polite nod. It's surprisingly light, faintly warm to the touch, and smells faintly of resin and smoke. You examine it more closely. It looks almost familiar, and it should, because here you are witnessing one of the earliest forms of the smoking pipe, long before the glamorized versions you see in museums or fantasy illustrations. A major historical fact lands softly in your mind. Some ancient cultures developed small, handheld tubes for heating and inhaling herbs, precursors to the pipes that would become widespread centuries later. You turn the tube in your hands. It's carved from a single piece of wood, polished until smooth, with an opening that funnels the smoke in a surprisingly refined way. Whoever carved this had skills, possibly too much free time. The person beside you whispers, "Don't inhale too fast." Last week someone tried to impress everyone and fell backwards into a pot of barley. You smile, trying not to laugh. The comment contains exactly the amount of humor that implies this was not the first time barley suffered from someone's overconfidence. The ceremony begins not with a chant, but with silence. A long, deep, communal silence. Everyone lifts their tube toward the fire, letting the faint heat drift through the inside of the wood. The tubes are not being used to burn anything directly, more to warm the herbs placed at the opposite end. A far gentler method than you expected. More like coaxing aroma than setting anything ablaze. The first exhale sounds like wind slipping between two stones. Then another. Then another. The smoke drifts upward in soft, quiet spirals, turning the clearing into a sanctuary woven from tree shadows, warm breath, and early invention. Someone passes you a tiny bowl containing a mixture of herbs. You lean over the bowl and inhale its scent. There's something earthy, something sweet, and something sharply green. You recognize it almost instantly, the plant that has been your shadow on this journey. The person on your left murmurs. It helps us listen, helps us think in longer lines. You have no idea what thinking in longer lines means, but it does sound poetic. Possibly also like something someone says before forgetting what they were talking about. A man across from you taps his wooden tube gently, producing a soft think. We craft these from river wood. Only wood that has touched both water and wind. Otherwise it burns too quickly. There's your obscure cultural tidbit for this section. A few early pipe-making communities believed that wood used for inhalation tools had to be sourced from trees shaped by both river and breeze, symbolizing balance between flow and clarity. Another beautiful superstition to add to your growing list of human attempts at meaning-making. Smoke curls upward like a ghost stretching its limbs after a long nap. It doesn't cloud the air, just floats, softly, delicately, as if aware that the forest doesn't appreciate dramatic gestures. You lift your own tube to warm it the way you see the others do. You don't need to inhale. Just being here is enough. The heated air wafts past your fingertips, carrying with it a sense of ancient calm, a sense of humans experimenting with plants, tools, rituals, and community long before modern debates and arguments began. Someone across the fire leans back, sighs contentedly, and says, "If the elders ask, we were meditating." Definitely meditating. You appreciate the honesty. You also appreciate how universal the phrase "don't tell the elders" is across time. The fire crackles softly, sending sparks that vanish before they hit the air. You notice markings carved into the stones around the fire. They form loops and lines that seem to represent seasons, harvests, and something that looks suspiciously like a recipe. Ancient people loved carving recipes everywhere except where they belonged. You touch one of the carved stones. It's warm, smooth, and worn from countless gatherings like this. Countless nights of people sitting together, sharing heat, breath, stories, and leaves. Humans are deeply social creatures. Even their quiet rituals require company. The person beside you lifts their tube again and inhales lightly. The exhale comes with a pleased hum. Never rush the breath, they say. The breath is the story. You nod slowly, letting that settle. It sounds profound. It also sounds like something someone says after exactly one ceremonial inhale. As the air thickens with soft smoke and softer murmurs, you feel the forest's hush deepening. A breeze stirs the upper branches but leaves the clearing untouched. Time feels slower here. Not frozen, just leisurely, like history took off its shoes and decided to sit for a while. The silence grows warm around you. The faces illuminated by firelight soften into expressions of serene thoughtfulness. Or maybe they're just trying to remember where they set their bowls. Hard to say. But the moment is peaceful. Not performative. Not dramatic. Just deeply human. And then, as if responding to your unspoken awareness of the moment, the elder of the circle speaks in a low, steady voice. Historians still debate whether our tools were created first for ceremony, medicine, or simple curiosity. Your eyebrows rise, again with the scholarly footnotes appearing mid-ritual, but you've learned to accept that some ancient communities were basically walking dissertations. The clearing begins to dim, not because the fire weakens, but because something in you shifts, subtle, slow, like sand loosening under a gentle wave. The figures around you become silhouettes. The warm wooden tube in your hand becomes a slender memory. The spiral smoke becomes a pathway upward, dissolving into a sky that's slowly turning the color of deep ink. And the forest floor beneath you softens into something else. Grainy, sandy, textured like warm soil after a long day's sun. You realize, with that softly floating feeling of transition, that you're being guided onward again. Not pulled, not pushed, just gently lifted by the story itself. The voices of the circle fade in a single shared exhale. The trees recede, the firelight thins, and the ground beneath your feet becomes a new landscape, waiting quietly for you to take your next step. You wake slowly into a morning that feels older than language itself. The light that slips across your face has traveled through dust, legend, and the faint aromatic ghosts of last night's hearth smoke. You stretch, hearing joints make sounds that could easily be mistaken for ancient door hinges, perfectly normal for someone who has been walking across centuries. You rise, wrap yourself in a shawl that smells faintly of campfire and crushed herbs, and step into the early world. The village around you is quiet in the way only pre-industrial landscapes can be. Soft footsteps, low murmurs, and the rustling of lives lived without hurry. A donkey sneezes, a surprisingly majestic event. You walk down a narrow path bordered by fields that shimmer with dew. Not far away, a small group of people are hunched over baskets of plants. The air has a floral sweet smell, though not overwhelmingly so. Something between hay and a lazy afternoon nap. Today, you are visiting what might be one of humanity's oldest trade fairs. Even if nobody here would use that term. It's just the day when people walk from one settlement to another to exchange things. Barley, wool, beads, goat cheese with questionable aromas, and yes, herbs with mind-altering reputations long predating modern hashtags. A man approaches you wearing a tunic dyed an earthy red. He nods in greeting and gestures for you to follow him. You do because honestly, what else were you planning to do today? He leads you toward a shaded area where several people sit in a semicircle. They're sorting plants into small piles, seeds for sowing, stems for burning, leaves for crushing. Each person works with such calm precision that even your modern sensibilities start to quiet down. Someone hands you a tiny bundle of dried plants. You hold it to your nose. It smells like stories. A woman beside you chuckles softly and says something you interpret as, "Careful. That one makes the mind go wandering." Her smile suggests the wandering can be pleasant. Or weird. Hard to say. Historical fact of this section. Archaeologists have found evidence of cannabis residue in ritual braziers from the Pamir region dating back over 2,500 years, suggesting that ancient gatherings may have included purposeful inhalation for spiritual or social reasons. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some early communities used cannabis seeds not just for food or cultivation, but as rattles for ceremonies, shaking dried pods filled with seeds to create rhythmic sounds. A young boy runs past chasing a chicken. The chicken is winning. You sit among the traders, listening as people discuss rainfall, stars, travel routes, and which plants grow more potent at higher elevations. Nobody rushes. Nobody multitasks. The world moves at the pace of breath and soil. The man in the red tunic offers you a steaming cup of something herbal. You sip it. Tastes like boiled optimism. Not bad. Historians still debate whether these exchanges were formal markets or simply neighborly gatherings. The woman says, as though answering a question you didn't ask. You stay with them through the late morning, feeling the weight of your modern thoughts dissolve a little. This is a place where nothing is hurried and everything has a season, even the act of doing absolutely nothing, a practice humans have tragically lost the manual for. A friendly voice beside you says, "Careful, you might start enjoying the quiet." 3 light jokes for the section settle in gently. You now realize that ancient trade fairs feel exactly like modern farmers' markets, only with fewer tattoos and more goats. Someone tries to sell you a bundle of herbs with the phrase, "It fixes everything except your love life." A man proudly displays a plant he claims is strong enough to make the moon look closer. You politely decline to test the claim. As the sun begins its slow descent, you rise, stretch, and prepare to continue traveling. The path ahead looks warm and welcoming, full of the promise of more stories hidden in the everyday. And so, quietly, you walk on. You head toward the mountains now, following a footpath that weaves between tall grasses and scattered stones. The air grows cooler with each step, carrying sharper scents, pine, earth, and the faint mineral smell of rocks that have seen too much weather to be impressed by your presence. You come upon a group of travelers preparing to ascend a ridge. They greet you with nods, and one gestures that you can join them. You do, partly because they seem kind and partly because walking alone into the mountains never ends well in folklore. The climb is slow but steady. The further you go, the more the world below fades into a muted patchwork of greens and browns. Up here, everything feels amplified. The sound of wind against stone, the echo of footsteps, the hum of insects conducting their own mysterious business. Eventually, you reach a plateau dotted with small circular structures. Low stone walls, roofs of woven reeds, smoke rising lazily from vents in the center. It's a temporary settlement built for seasonal gatherings, rituals, trade, music, and the kind of socializing that requires fewer words and more shared silence. You're invited into one of the structures. Inside, it's warm and dim, lit by a central hearth. Around it sit several people, elders, younger travelers, and a singer whose voice seems to hover just above the flames. They're burning something fragrant in a shallow bowl. It smells familiar now, sweet, earthy, comforting. The singer finishes a verse and nods at you as if acknowledging your journey. You sit among them, feeling the warmth seep into your bones. Someone hands you a small cup of clarified butter, which tastes like liquid campfire luxury. An elder beside you says softly, "Plants speak differently in the mountains." You nod, mostly because nodding feels like the correct response to such wisdom. Historical fact of this section. In ancient Central Asian highlands, cannabis plants naturally achieved higher THC levels due to environmental stressors like colder temperatures, increased UV exposure, and thin mountain air. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some mountain communities believe that fragrant smoke helped guide lost ancestors to seasonal gathering sites, like an ancient version of turning on your phone's location services. The elder chuckles at your wide-eyed expression and adds, "Historians still debate whether these ceremonies were meant for healing, celebration, or simply storytelling." As the fire crackles, The group passes around a carved wooden instrument. Part flute, part rattle, part... No one really knows how this works. When it reaches you, someone encourages you to try it. You blow into it. Produces a sound that can only be described as shy goose. Everyone smiles warmly. One person pats your shoulder as if to say, "Not bad for a first attempt." 3 gentle jokes drift through the scene. A traveler shows you a bag of herbs and proudly claims, "These make you think your thoughts of thoughts." An elder says, "If the smoke goes toward you, it means the spirit's like you. If it goes away, it means you should bathe." The singer remarks, "Songs sound better up here because the mountains can't leave." You sit quietly, listening to the group share stories. Myths, memories, warnings delivered with humor. The fire dances and the fragrant smoke curls up toward the roof, slipping through the vent like a whispered offering. Time slows, and then slows again. Eventually it forgets what it was in a hurry to do. You lean back against a smooth stone wall and close your eyes. The warmth, the scent, the soft voices. They wrap around you like an old blanket, worn but perfectly comfortable. This mountain gathering feels like the birthplace of countless traditions. Rituals, storytelling, shared warmth, herbal experiments that would one day become historical footnotes and late-night internet debates. Outside, the wind sighs gently against the ridge, and the journey continues. You wake to a soft rustling sound, the kind that might be leaves rearranging themselves out of courtesy. Morning light slips through the woven shutters of the small hut where you fell asleep. You stretch, feeling as though the night has pressed you gently into the shape of someone who belongs in this time, even though you definitely don't. You step outside, greeted by the smell of damp soil and early sunlight. A woman waits near the doorway, wrapped in a shawl dyed the color of moss. She gestures for you to follow her down a worn stone path. You do, partly out of curiosity and partly because refusing an invitation in an ancient village seems like a fast track to accidentally offending someone's grandmother. The path leads you to a walled garden, larger than it looked from the outside. Inside, rows upon rows of plants fill the space. Long, thin grasses, wide, fuzzy leaves, flowers that seem unusually confident for their size. The air is cool and fragrant, layered with so many scents that your modern nose has trouble keeping up. This, the woman tells you with a quiet pride, is the Garden of Remedies. A place where the community keeps its medicinal plants, culinary herbs, and, she points to a corner, those special plants reserved for ceremonies, sleepless nights, and conversations that require more honesty than usual. You walk slowly between the rows. Bees buzz lazily, as if even they are respecting the early hour. The woman plucks a leaf from one plant and rubs it between her fingers. She offers it to you. You sniff it. It smells faintly of citrus and something sharper. That one, she says, helps clear the mind. A pause. Sometimes too much. You tuck the leaf behind your ear because, well, people have been doing it for thousands of years and it seems rude not to participate. Nearby, a small group of older villagers kneel around a plant with star-shaped leaves. They're discussing something in low voices, occasionally poking the soil with sticks in a way that conveys serious scientific intention. Historical fact of this section. Ancient Assyrians, by the 1st millennium BCE, listed cannabis in their medical tablets under the name Cunabu, prescribing it for mind-loosening and physical ailments. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some early gardeners believed cannabis plants grew best if spoken to kindly, one of history's earliest examples of emotional support horticulture. You kneel beside the group. One of the elders hands you a small stone bowl filled with resin. You lean in. The smell is rich, sweet, earthy, and layered like a scent that has been slowly gathering stories for centuries. One elder mutters, "Historians still debate whether this plant taught humans to relax or whether humans taught the plant to be cultivated." You nod as though this makes perfect sense. As you wander further, the woman shows you a small wooden shed with bundles of herbs hanging upside down, drying in the shaded air. Their aromas mingle in a way that's both soothing and slightly chaotic, like a perfume shop run by indecisive monks. 3 soft jokes drift through the quiet garden. A young gardener boasts that his plants grow better when he sings to them, though his neighbors insist the plants are just trying to avoid hearing him. One elder insists a particular herb cures worry. Another claims it causes worry. Both agree it pairs well with cheese. A child tries to water a plant by pouring water directly onto the leaves. The plant survives purely out of patience. You linger in the garden far longer than intended, lulled by the calm, the scent, and the gentle hum of insects whose life purpose appears to include being extremely pleased with themselves. Eventually, the woman guides you to the garden gate. She presses a small pouch of dried leaves into your hand. "For the road," she says. You thank her, step back onto the path, and continue your journey, feeling lighter, calmer, and slightly more fragrant than before. The afternoon shadows stretch long and soft across the landscape as you follow a trail leading uphill. The air cools, carrying with it the scent of snow hidden somewhere above you. A thin wisp of smoke curls into the sky from a stone structure ahead, round, low, and half sunk into the earth, like a quiet secret waiting for someone to notice. A man stands at the entrance, wrapped in a fur-lined cloak. He nods gently, and with the calm authority of someone who hasn't hurried once in his life, he motions for you to enter. Inside, the chamber is dim, warmed by a fire that sits low in a carved stone pit. Smoke drifts upward through a hole in the ceiling, thin and graceful, like it rehearsed this moment. Around the fire sit several people, young, old, and in between, all watching the flames in the dreamy way people do when they're thinking about everything and nothing. You sit down among them. A bowl is passed to you, a simple clay piece decorated with marks that look like flowing water. Inside is a mixture of herbs, familiar ones, ceremonial ones. A soft voice beside you says, "For clarity, for memory, sometimes for forgetting." You inhale gently. The smoke is warm, fragrant, calming. It feels ancient, as though each tendril carries a piece of someone's story. The elder opposite you begins speaking, not loudly, not for dramatic effect. His words fall into the space like stones into still water, ripples of meaning expanding slowly. He speaks of journeys through mountains, of winter storms, of lost travelers guided home by scent and smoke. He speaks of young hunters using herbs to steady their nerves, and of elders using them to ease aching bones and soften heavy thoughts. Historical fact of this section. Chinese texts from around 500 BCE describe cannabis as both a medicine and a visionary plant, used by shamans to enter trance states. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some communities believe the smoke carried messages upward, literal airmail, to ancestors who, presumably, were better listeners than living relatives. You watch the fire, feeling your breath fall in rhythm with the flickering. The chamber seems to inhale and exhale with you. Shadows shift against the curving walls, and the room feels almost like a giant lung. One woman laughs softly and tells a story of a man who used too much herb smoke during a ritual and then insisted the stars were trying to rearrange themselves alphabetically. Everyone agrees the stars lost interest halfway through the letter M. Another traveler mentions that historians still debate whether these gatherings were spiritual, social, medicinal, or simply an excuse to sit indoors and not deal with goats. 3 gentle jokes nestle themselves into the scene. One man claims he can interpret smoke patterns the way others read weather forecasts. Everyone nods politely. Nobody believes him. Someone mentions a cousin who once tried to dry herbs by placing them on a hot rock, only to discover accidental incense. A visitor asks if the herbs will make him wise. The elder replies, "Only if you were halfway there already." The fire burns lower. The smoke thins. The chamber grows quiet except for the soft crackling of embers. As you sit in the dim warmth, something inside you settles. Thoughts drift like slow clouds. The world outside feels distant and unhurried. Eventually, the elder stands and gestures toward the doorway. It's time to move on. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just naturally, like a conversation ending because both people have run out of words at the same moment. You step outside. The sky glows with the last colors of the day. The world feels bigger, softer, and somehow more welcoming. You breathe in the cool air, and you walk forward. You follow a winding dirt path that curves gently down the hillside, your footsteps soft in the evening air. The sky is turning the color of warm embers, that in-between shade where you're not sure if the day is ending or the night is warming up for its shift. The road ahead hums with quiet movement, wheels creaking, hooves stepping, soft voices rising like distant birdsong. A caravan rolls slowly toward you. Not the flashy kind with banners and jingling ornaments. No, this one feels decidedly practical, as if it has seen enough wind and sand to know better than to show off. Canvas covers stretch across wooden frames. Painted symbols, spirals, stars, and the occasional handprint decorate the sides. A figure at the front lifts a hand in greeting. She's older, wrapped in robes faded by so many summers they now resemble the soft, comfortable colors of river stones. Her smile is gentle but keen, the smile of someone who observes everything yet judges nothing. "You walk alone," she notes. You shrug. "Only temporarily." "Good. Temporary is a lovely word." She beckons you to join the caravan as it slows into a resting circle at a nearby clearing. A group of healers dismount, their bags bulging with dried plants, clay jars, powders, and mysterious items that look suspiciously like they belong on a shelf labeled "Do not ask about this." A fire is lit, small, efficient, and ringed by stones. The air fills with the faint crackle of burning twigs and the subtle perfume of crushed herbs tossed deliberately into the flames. You sit with the group as they prepare their evening meal. One healer grinds leaves with a stone pestle. Another sorts bundles of dried stalks. A third carefully unwraps a pouch containing seeds that sparkle faintly in the firelight. Historical fact of this section. Nomadic healer groups existed across Central Asia as early as the Bronze Age, carrying medicinal herbs, including early forms of cannabis, between distant communities. A younger healer offers you a small wooden cup of warm tea. You sip it carefully, because you've learned your lesson. Ancient herbal teas can either relax you, energize you, or send your thoughts sprinting in 12 directions at once. This one, fortunately, tastes like chamomile with a hint of mystery. Not the alarming kind, the cozy kind. The caravan members begin sharing stories as people do around fires. One healer explains that some herbs must be harvested at dawn, because plants, like people, are more willing before breakfast. Another claims she once cured a man's fear of goats by making him sleep next to one for a week. Everyone agrees the goat worked harder than she did. An obscure cultural tidbit emerges casually in conversation. Some wanderers believed that storing herbs in pouches made of wolf fur granted them strength, though skeptics insisted it merely gave everything a suspicious smell. Someone adds, historians still debate whether these practices were based on observation, superstition, or the simple fact that people in the past had a lot of free time. 3 soft jokes drift into the evening. A young apprentice insists his herbs grow stronger when exposed to positive thoughts, but no one can confirm his plants ever listen. One healer swears she can predict the weather by watching how smoke leans. Another claims she can predict her ex-husband's bad moods the same way. A child points to the stars and announces she's naming them after soup ingredients. No one stops her. As the fire settles into a low glow, the caravan begins preparing their sleeping mats. You're offered a space beneath one of the carts, sheltered from the night wind. The wooden frame creaks softly above you as if humming a lullaby meant only for travelers. You fall asleep to hushed laughter, distant hoofsteps, and the comforting knowledge that you are exactly where you're supposed to be in this strange stretch of history. You wake before the caravan stirs. The morning sky resembles a washed-out watercolor, soft gray, pale lavender, and a hint of rose. The grass beneath you is cool with dew, glittering like the earth decided to accessorize overnight. You stretch, then step away from the resting camp and continue your journey. The land seems to change subtly as you walk. Hills flatten into gentle plains. The air shifts from crisp to mild. Even birdsong slows, as if time itself is taking a leisurely stroll beside you. Ahead lies a valley draped in morning mist. You follow a faint trail downward, your steps muted by the thick grass. The mist curls around your legs, soft as wool and equally reluctant to move. Down in the valley's center, you see a circle of stones. Ancient, tall, leaning slightly as though they've grown tired of standing straight for so many centuries. A lone figure sits among them. He's old, very old, but in the sturdy way mountains are old. His hair falls in white waves down his shoulders. Before him burns a small fire, barely taller than your hand. Wisps of smoke drift upward, twisting through the stone circle as though navigating a labyrinth only they understand. He looks up, unbothered by your sudden arrival. "You're early," he says. "For what?" you ask. He shrugs. "Something." You sit down because refusing an invitation from a man who looks like he meditates for fun seems unwise. He holds out a shallow bowl. Inside it, herbs float atop warm water, releasing a delicate fragrance. You inhale. The scent is gentle earth, pine, memory. "This valley," he says, "slows the world. People come here to think, or stop thinking." You sip the infusion. The warmth spreads through you like a slow-moving ripple. Historical fact of this section. Ancient Scythians, nomadic people of the Eurasian steppe, used cannabis seeds and flowers in steam-filled tents as part of funerary and cleansing rituals. The old man taps one of the stones lightly. These markers once guided travelers. Some believed they softened the boundary between the physical world and the one that holds our dreams. You place your hand on the stone. It's cool, solid, steady, everything your thoughts are not. He chuckles at your expression. Historians still debate whether these stones served spiritual, astronomical, or purely practical purposes. He leans in. "Personally, I think people liked building circles. They're comforting." 3 soft jokes settle into the quiet air. He tells you some travelers meditate so intensely here that they forget where they left their belongings. One man apparently misplaced an entire horse. According to local legend, the valley once hosted a meditation group that fell asleep for 2 days straight. When they woke, they claimed it was their most productive meeting. A child once asked why the stones lean. The old man told her it's because the stones get sleepy too. You and the elder sit watching the mist swirl around the fire. The smoke drifts slowly upward, carrying the patience of centuries with it. Eventually, the old man stands and gestures toward a path leading out of the valley. A narrow trail lined with wildflowers and small, humming insects. Go slowly, he says. The world outside moves faster than this place. You nod, take one last breath of the valley's calm air, and step onto the path. Each movement feels unhurried, intentional, as though you've learned, if only for a moment, how to walk in step with time rather than running ahead of it. You continue forward, the world opening gently before you. You walk out of the valley with a calm that clings to your thoughts like morning dew. The trail rises gently, curving into a region where the wind grows playful and carries hints of parchment, dust, and something faintly aromatic, like old ink mixed with herbs someone swore were for clarity. Though clarity was rarely guaranteed. Ahead stands a structure unlike anything you've seen so far. It's a library, or at least it pretends to be one. The building is squat, made of heavy stone, and looks as though gravity has been trying to flatten it for centuries but became bored halfway. A wooden sign hanging crookedly by one nail reads, "Knowledge within. Enter quietly or else." You appreciate the directness. The doors creak as you push them open, and you're greeted by a wave of dusty warmth. The air smells like forgotten chapters. Shelves tower in precarious towers. Books leaning on scrolls, scrolls leaning on tablets, tablets leaning on things you hope are just decorative. Everything is organized in the unique system scholars call, "We'll fix it later." A robed man appears from behind a stack taller than he is. He adjusts his spectacles, which glitter with half a dozen scratches that somehow magnify you into 3 overlapping versions of yourself. "Ah," he says, "a visitor. Don't touch anything important." "What's important?" you ask. He sighs. "If I knew, I would have labeled it." He leads you deeper into the labyrinth. Each wing seems dedicated to a different topic: plants, rituals, cookery, astronomy, animals large enough to reconsider your confidence. He stops at a table covered in parchment. "This," he announces, "is our section on early herbal vapors, fumigation, aromatics, and, well, experiments." You lean over a drawing of a tent filled with billowing steam. People inside appear peaceful or possibly extremely confused. Art in those days wasn't always precise. Historical fact of this section. Ancient Egyptian rituals sometimes included burning cannabis, mixed with myrrh and frankincense, as part of temple ceremonies. The scholar waves a feather quill dramatically. People used plants to relax, to heal, to focus, or to pretend they were wiser than they were. He hands you a scroll featuring an odd detail, a medieval note describing hazy tints of contemplation, which sounds suspiciously like people getting lightly high while claiming spiritual enlightenment. A note in the margin says, "Results unclear. Participants laughed for hours." He lowers his voice. Historians still debate whether this was medicinal or just a very early attempt at recreational philosophy. The jokes of the section unfurl naturally. One document complains that a monk inhaled too much incense and began preaching about potatoes, centuries before potatoes reached Europe. A scholar wrote that cannabis smoke helped him think deep thoughts. But all his notes say is, donkeys are underrated. Another scroll lists the side effects of excessive vapor, including forgetting where you put your sandals, which remains relatable. You wander deeper among the stacks. A chill creeps in as the light dims, yet your curiosity expands instead of shrinking. Endless shelves, endless stories, endless experiments by people who weren't afraid to try odd things in the name of knowledge or boredom. When you finally step outside, the sky is turning gold again. The world feels larger now, but also softer. Knowledge tends to do that. You move on. The road narrows as evening settles. You walk through fields brushed with bronze light, the kind that turns every hill and stone into something gently sacred. The wind hums along, warm and steady, as though it has decided to escort you for this last stretch of your wandering. Ahead, on a small rise, sits a single fire. Not a bonfire, not a campfire, just a quiet flame in a simple metal basin. Someone built it with intention, the way people do when they want to mark an ending without speaking one aloud. You approach slowly. No one else is there, just the fire waiting. You sit beside it, letting the warmth seep into your hands. Your journey through ancient valleys, wandering caravans, smoky rituals, dusty libraries, and slow-moving places echoes behind you like soft footsteps receding down a corridor. You think of the seed steam of the Scythians, the trance-filled tents, the herbal experiments that shaped centuries of healing, ritual, and recreation. You think of the humor, the uncertainty, the timeless curiosity of people who always wanted to understand their world, even if their methods were questionable at best. The flame flickers, steady and patient. Historical fact of this section. Cannabis residue has been found in 2,500-year-old Chinese burial braziers used in ritual ceremonies. A faint breeze shifts the smoke, drawing gentle patterns in the air. One curl loops and dissolves, reminding you of the valley where time slowed. Another wavers like the caravan banners. Another rises straight upward like the scholar's quill. And then begins the soft wind down, the slow fading that asks nothing of you but your breath. The fire drifts into a gentler glow, the embers breathing slowly as if they themselves are growing sleepy. The world around you blurs at the edges, not from smoke, but from the soft unraveling of the day. You feel the ground beneath you warm and familiar, and the night sky above stretches wide and calm, a quiet canopy where nothing rushes and nothing insists. Your thoughts move like drifting leaves, unhurried, weightless, wandering nowhere in particular. Every sound softens. The whisper of the wind, the faint crackle of the fire, the distant rustle of night creatures settling into their own endings. Even the air feels slower, as though it has decided to rest alongside you. You breathe in, gently, and the world breathes with you. You breathe out, even more gently, and everything settles a little deeper. In the distance, the last traces of twilight dim into silvery blue. Stars emerge gradually, not demanding your attention, simply offering their quiet company. The darkness is not heavy here. It's warm, like a wool blanket draped lightly over a tired traveler. The fire lowers itself into a soft ember glow, small sparks drifting upward like tiny fireflies with nowhere urgent to be. Each one rises, pauses, and disappears into the cool night, leaving only calm in its wake. You feel the long, wandering stories you've gathered, of valleys, caravans, forgotten libraries, ancient rituals, fold themselves neatly into the stillness. They don't press or chatter or demand anything. They simply rest beside you, settled, content. And as the embers dim further, you sense the journey easing to its final sigh. Quiet, gentle, complete. A slow, peaceful ending to a long path walked without haste. A calm place where the fire fades, and so does the day.